Two women dining on a restaurant patio attracted the attention of passers-by, but the friends were too engrossed in chatting with each other to pay attention. How long has it been since we've seen each other, Melanie? A tall, dark-haired woman asked. I feel like I haven't seen you in forever. The second woman was blonde and a year or two younger than her friend. I know, Jerry, and I feel bad about it. But between grad school and married life, it's been hard to find time for much else. How's business school going? You must be close to getting your MBA by now. Yes, everything is in perfect order. We have spring break next week, and then there will only be a few weeks of classes left before I get my diploma. I've already turned in my thesis, so I don't have to worry about that. And even better, it looks like I'll be exempt from all my finals. Everything should be smooth sailing from here on out. That's great, Melanie. Congratulations. Do you have a job yet? No. I've been working really hard for the past 2 years, so I'm planning on taking a little break before I get involved in the labor wars. I want to relax and have some fun before I jump back into work. But enough about me. How are things going for you? Has a special man come into your life? I'm doing well, but I'm still looking for Mr. Right. The blonde gave her brunette friend an appraising look. With your looks, I'd be slow to settle down. I bet you could party with a different beau every night if you wanted to. Jerry gave her friend a wry smile. Trust me, Melanie, the single life these days isn't all it's cracked up to be. You have to go through a dozen creeps to find one decent guy, and frankly, it's getting tiresome. Truth be told, I'm a little jealous of you, happily married to a great guy like Adam. And speaking of Adam, how's your handsome husband doing? I think he's fine. Oh, I think I just heard a discouraging word. What's the matter, Melanie? Aren't things between you two just fine? The blonde shook her head. It's not that we're having problems. It's just that Adam is so busy with his business that we don't have time to spend time together. And even when we do, we don't have a lot of money to spend on entertainment. Well, all that time he spends on his company is focused on building a future for the two of you. And as for money, I suspect your graduate school tuition isn't cheap. I know, and I appreciate it. But sometimes I just want to go out and have fun like I used to. In high school, all my classmates talk about is going to parties and meeting people at bars. Meanwhile, I sit at home and watch reruns on TV. The dark-haired woman gave her friend a shrewd look. Is there anyone in particular at school you'd like to go to a party with? Melanie laughed. You've always been able to read me too well. Then she leaned forward so she wouldn't be overheard. Actually, there's this freshman, Carl. He's really nice. She then blushed. And he's definitely interested in me. Every time we're together, he goes out of his way to say something really nice about how good I look and how well I'm doing in school. Jerry shook her head. I don't think Adam would be very happy to hear that. It's just harmless flirting. It doesn't mean anything. But you're right. Adam's pretty old-fashioned about that sort of thing. That's why I'm not going to tell him. She moved in her chair. But I can't help but remember how things were before I got married. It was so much fun playing the field and meeting different guys. I miss all of that. You need to be more careful, girlfriend. You have a hell of a husband, and you don't want to risk losing him. You know Adam would never tolerate it if he caught you fooling around. And if you ever did, I'm willing to bet there'd be plenty of other women who'd gladly comfort him afterward. I know. And honestly, I want to spend the rest of my life with him, start a family and all that. I just want to have a little fun before things get so serious. She lowered her voice and leaned closer again. Remember the guy I told you about? Yesterday he asked me to go to Florida with him for spring break. If I could do it without Adam finding out, I'd probably say yes. She leaned back and grinned contemptuously. But that's just a fantasy. It'll never happen. Jerry leaned back in her chair and looked at Melanie for a long time. Finally, she nodded her head as if she had made a decision. Don't be so sure. I know how you could do it and get away with it. Melanie let out a sigh that was equal parts disbelief and delight. You're kidding me. How? Are you sure you want to jeopardize your marriage just for a week-long affair? If I was sure Adam would never find out, why wouldn't I? But you're just teasing me, Jerry. There's no way I could avoid something like that. There is, and it's actually quite simple. Jerry began marking each step on her fingers. First, you need to create a new email account on Gmail. Set it up under an anonymous name, something like Good Friend. Then you use that account to send Adam an anonymous email, warning him that his wife is having an affair. I'm going to tell him I'm having an affair? That's crazy. Why would I do that? Jerry continued nonchalantly. More accurately, you'll tell him that Melanie is having an affair with some man that Adam doesn't know and can't easily verify. And what will that do? No. It'll take his attention away from your hot grad school boyfriend. Yeah, but it'll make Adam suspicious of me. Exactly. But when he can't find the guy you're supposedly having an affair with, he'll have no choice but to confront you and demand to know what's going on. But I don't want him to suspect me. No, you don't. So when he confronts you, you will be very angry with him for not trusting you. In fact, you get so angry that you call a time out on your marriage. Doesn't your mom live in Florida? Melanie was caught off guard by the sudden change. Yeah, why? Great. In anger, you tell Adam you're going to go to Florida over spring break to be with your mother and decide what to do about your marriage. And then, while he's here in town desperately trying to find a mystery man, you're in Florida with Carl having your little affair. How am I going to explain all this to Mom? Jerry rolled her eyes. You don't? What's more, you're not even supposed to see your mother while you're there. But what if Adam calls her? Tell him not to. Tell him you need a break from him to sort things out. He shouldn't try to contact you or your mother while you're away. Warn him that if he tries, you may not come home at all. Melanie stared at her friend for a while, mulling over her plan. Finally, her face brightened. You know, Jerry, I can see how this could work. But what happens when I get back? That's easy. Adam will miss you madly by then. And since he won't be able to find the mystery man who supposedly had an affair with you, he'll conclude that someone maliciously played a trick on you. He will feel very guilty and will beg you to forgive him for not trusting you. You will forgive him and everything will be fine. You'll have fun, and now you and Adam will be together again, closer than ever. Right. What about the mystery man I'm supposed to be having an affair with? Should I just make up a name for him? You could, but I think it would be much more believable if it was a real person. Pick someone you can't have an affair with, like someone very old or living far away or dead. That way, if Adam manages to track him down, you'll stay safe. Hey, I think I know the perfect guy. I had a creepy professor in one of my classes my first year of grad school. He must have left town because I never saw him again. How about that? Perfect. Melanie abruptly reached across the table and squeezed her friend's hand. You're the best, Jerry. I'm so excited. I really think this is going to work. Then she hugged herself and shuddered slightly. I can't wait to tell Carl. Adam Weatherby. Any word from the supplier on those parts we ordered? When the foreman shook his head, Adam returned to his office and sank into his second-hand swivel chair. He rubbed his forehead worriedly. If these parts don't show up soon, we're going to miss the prototype deadline. After the foreman left, Adam sat back and tried to come up with a backup plan. When his email box rang, he quickly turned to check his inbox, hoping for good news. But when he saw that the subject line was "About your wife," he almost deleted the email. But curiosity took over and he opened the message. I hate to break it to you, but Melanie is having an affair with Professor Bellingham. I just thought you should know. A good friend. What the hell? Stunned, Adam reread the message once more, unable to comprehend the horrible words. What kind of nonsense was this? It can't be true. Melanie wouldn't cheat on me. Someone must be trying to stir up animosity between us. But who's doing it and why? He started to delete the message but hesitated. That's the last thing I need to deal with right now. It has to be a mistake, a misunderstanding. But his practical side wouldn't let him ignore the message. Damn it, of course it couldn't be true. With anger, he clicked the reply button on the email. Who the hell are you? Why are you making such a horrible accusation? What proof do you have? He pressed send and then stared at the screen in impotent rage. This wasn't going to lead to anything good. There was no telling when this guy would respond, or if he would respond at all. And there's no way to track him down. Maybe we'd better start figuring out who this Bellingham guy was. He opened a browser, went to the university's webpage, and searched for professors in the Graduate School of Business. There was no Professor Bellingham on the staff. He went back to the faculty roster and searched the entire university. Again, he had no luck. Frustrated, he turned to other schools in the area, but all to no avail. "This is crazy," he muttered to himself. "Did my good friend just make up a name?" Next, he tried a Google search, and the search engine quickly came up with 5 names. But 2 of them were female, and none were local. I knew it was fake. Someone was trying to mess with me, or drive me crazy. But again, he could not bring himself to delete the letter. Now that it had been sent, a seed of doubt began to germinate in his mind. God, what if she's having an affair? I haven't seen any signs, but that doesn't mean anything yet. Besides, I've been so busy at work that I've barely spent any time with her. What if she gets upset about being ignored? I know there have been times when she's wanted to go out and have fun and I've turned her down. But hell, I work almost 70 hours a week trying to run a business. Doesn't she understand that? Doesn't she see that I'm doing all this for us? And to be honest, we really can't afford anything extravagant. Her business school tuition gets more expensive every year, and I'm putting everything I have left into this place to try to get it off the ground. Still, I guess I've been neglecting her. With guilt, he started checking his calendar, trying to find the last time they'd met. After scrolling through 3 months and finding nothing, he stopped looking. Damn. But even as the guilt grew, he felt a corresponding surge of anger. I may not have given Melanie as much attention as she wanted, but that doesn't give her the right to cheat on me. Besides, we discussed the sacrifices we would have to make when we decided to start the business. She agreed 100% then, so she hardly has a right to complain now. His musings were interrupted by the foreman poking his head through the doorway. "Hey, Adam. Good news. The components we need just showed up." "Thank goodness. All right, let's unpack them and get them to the store as soon as possible." As the foreman disappeared, Adam took a deep breath. Well, at any rate, one crisis averted. He grinned crookedly. I guess that means I can spend more time taking care of my wife. After spending even more time fruitlessly searching the internet, he sat back and tried to think. If Mel is really having an affair, he just has to be with someone at the university. Maybe my good friend got his name mixed up, or maybe the university just didn't put his name on their website. He went back to the university's webpage and found the phone number for the Human Resources Department. When the secretary answered his call, he asked if Professor Bellingham was on the faculty. "What department, please?" "I think it's the Graduate School of Business, but I don't know exactly." There was a pause, and then a voice came on the line again. "I'm sorry, sir, but we don't have a Professor Bellingham in the School of Business." "What about the other schools?" A sigh was heard. "Please wait." This time, the wait was longer. When the woman finally returned to the line, her manners were gone. "Sir, there is no Professor Bellingham at the university." A thought struck him. Maybe he was a staff member a year or 2 ago? I can only confirm the current faculty. Why? It's university policy, sir. Is there anything else I can help you with? No, you've done all you can, he said, trying not to sound too sarcastic. He made another attempt, calling the dean of the business school. He went back and forth with the administrative assistant, but in the end, he didn't learn anything more. By this time, Adam's head was throbbing. I need a good stiff drink, he thought with disgust as he hung up the phone. But the thought gave him an idea, and he picked up the phone once more. Hey, Jerry, it's Adam. Listen, any chance of meeting me after work at Maxie's for a drink? I've got a problem, and I really need your advice. No, I'd rather not talk about it over the phone. Can you do that? Great. I'll meet you there at 6. Before leaving, he checked his email one more time. There were no more messages from good friend. Entering Maxie's, Adam noticed Jerry sitting at a table in a quiet corner. In front of her was a glass of white wine and a mug of his favorite draft beer. He walked over and kissed her cheek. Thanks for the beer and, more importantly, for coming tonight. I really needed to talk to you. When he sat down, she took a sip of wine and then looked at him for a long moment. Okay, Adam, spill it. What's going on? Any problems in your business? Not knowing where to begin, he stared at his mug for a moment, then mumbled, You wouldn't happen to know Professor Bellingham from the university, would you? She shook her head, puzzled. Bellingham? I've never heard of him. Why? He sighed and held out a printout of an email to her. I got this today. She scanned it quickly, gasped, and reread it again. Then she looked at him with sympathetic eyes. Poor Adam. No wonder you didn't want to talk about it over the phone. What do you think about it? I don't know what to think, Jerry. I can't believe it's true, but I don't want to bury my head in the sand and pretend it didn't happen either. I've spent all day trying to track down this mysterious Professor Bellingham, but I've hit a stone wall at the university. Now I don't know what to do. I can't afford to hire a private detective, and I don't have time to play detective myself. That's why I wanted to talk to you. You've been a good friend to Melanie and me for a long time. Please tell me what you think. She took another sip of her drink and then reached out to give his palm a quick squeeze. What you're really asking is if I think she's having an affair. I can't give you that absolute certainty. For one thing, I haven't seen or heard anything that would make me think she was unfaithful to you. For another, I haven't seen much of her in the last few months. His face creased in pain, and she hurried to continue. You know as well as I do that there are some people who like to cause trouble, and it could be something like this. Or you may have business enemies who would like you to be distracted by the friction in your marriage. There are probably other scenarios that I haven't even thought of. What I do know is that you can't ignore it and hope it will go away on its own. I know how much you believe in marital fidelity, and I know that any hint that your marriage has been broken will eat away at you. If you don't deal with it, the doubt will eventually ruin your relationship with Melanie as effectively as the affair. He stared at her with a hunted expression. I know you're right, Jerry, but what can I do? In my opinion, you should show the damned thing to Melanie. She needs to know that someone has accused her of infidelity, and she deserves the chance to shine the light she has on it. After all, Adam, if someone made such an accusation against you, you'd want to know, wouldn't you? He sat silently for a moment, then nodded his head. You're right. If I don't share this with Melanie, it will affect how I act with her. It will eventually separate us just as surely as if she had actually cheated on me. He stood up and hugged the dark-haired woman. Thank you for helping me think this through, Jerry. I don't know what I would have done without you. You know how much I care about you two, Adam. If I can help you in any way, please let me know. He nodded gratefully and headed for the door while she remained standing still. When he got home, Melanie was waiting for him. Where have you been, Adam? I tried to call, but you didn't answer. He ignored her question. Taking her hand, he led her over to the couch and sat her down beside him. I need to show you something, Mel. Something that's been throwing me off my game. She sat down next to him, her face betraying her nervousness. He held out a printout to her. I received this in an email today. Can you tell me anything about it? She read it quickly. Then, to his surprise, she jumped up and started yelling. Do you think I'm cheating on you? I don't believe that. You got some bullshit accusation from some anonymous friend, and you're ready to accuse me of cheating? No, honey, I didn't accuse you of anything. If you didn't accuse me, then why did you show me these filthy lies? She snatched up the printout, rolled it into a ball, and tossed it at him. You might as well have plunged a knife into my heart. It hurts me so deeply. You trust a man who is too cowardly to even sign his name more than you trust your own wife. She grabbed her purse and headed for the front door. I can't bear to even look at you right now. I'm leaving and I don't know when I'll be back. With those words, she ran out, slamming the door behind her. A moment later, he heard the roar of her car's engine and then the squeal of tires as she pulled out of their driveway. Oh shit, I didn't see that coming. Now I feel even worse than before, he groaned, sinking down onto the couch and wrapping his arms around his head. As he sat there, Adam's first thoughts were defensive. Why would she be so upset? She didn't even let me finish. I didn't accuse her of cheating. I just showed her what someone else said, that's all. But he knew the answer before he even finished. If Mel had passed that note to me, I probably would have blown up too. But what was I supposed to do? Act like everything was fine? Jerry was right. I couldn't just ignore the letter. That wouldn't be fair to Mel or to me. Although he spent the rest of the evening mentally going over the situation, he no sooner came to a solution than he started. He knew that he and Mel needed to talk, but he couldn't even decide exactly what to say to her. All he knew for sure was that he wanted to bring his wife home to try and patch things up. Emotionally drained, Adam felt himself starting to tire, but he was determined not to go to bed until Melanie returned. After another hour of waiting, he lay down on the couch and soon dozed off. Sometime after midnight, he was awakened by the sound of the door opening. Melanie walked into the living room and stared at him with her hands on her hips. Mel, we really need to... I don't want to talk about this right now, she cut him off abruptly. You can stay on the couch for the night and we'll talk in the morning. Without waiting for an answer, she turned on her heels and headed down the hallway to their bedroom. When he heard the door slam, he groaned and lay back on the couch, hoping sleep would return. It was taking a long time. Adam usually got up early to get to the office before anyone else. But even though his internal clock woke him at the usual time, he felt obliged not to leave until Melanie showed up so they could talk. He brewed some coffee and sat down at his laptop to read the news while he waited. It was almost 8 o'clock when Melanie walked into the kitchen. Adam was shocked to see her dragging a suitcase behind her. Where are you going, Melanie? I thought we were going to... And he didn't have time to finish before she raised her hand to stop him. It's been a terrible shock, Adam. It calls our whole marriage into question. I need to be alone to process what has happened. Spring break starts tomorrow and I'm going to go to Florida to visit my mother. She pierced him with an angry look. I plan to spend the whole week there and then go back to classes next Monday. While I'm gone, I don't want to hear a word from you. I need this time to myself. Don't call me. Don't call my mother. Don't call my mother's house. Do you understand? He nodded helplessly. I'm serious, Adam. If you try to call, I may not come home at all. Do you understand? He nodded again. Fine, she stated emphatically, and walked out the door to her car, dragging her suitcase behind her. As she drove away, Adam sat in shock for several minutes. Finally, he went back into the bathroom to shave and change his clothes. Then he drove dejectedly to work. When he got to the office, good news awaited him. His foreman had taken the lead in distributing the missing components to the right stations on the model production line, and testing was well underway. At least the business won't crash and burn today, unlike my marriage, Adam said bitterly to himself. In the afternoon, he was working on a spreadsheet when the phone rang. When he answered, it was Jerry on the line. I was worried and wanted to see how you were doing. How did it go last night with Melanie? Oh, wow, it's a long and sad story, he replied dejectedly. Oh, that doesn't sound good. Why don't we get together and talk about it again over a drink? That would be great, Jerry. Same place, okay? He checked his email one more time before leaving, but there was still nothing from Goodfriend. When he walked into the bar, Jerry immediately noticed the dark circles under his eyes. Poor Adam. Looks like you didn't get much sleep last night. Tell me what happened. He took a large sip from his beer mug and began to recount the night's encounter and Melanie's morning departure. Jerry looked at him with a mixture of sadness and guilt. Oh, Adam, I feel so awful. You took my advice and it turned out to be the wrong thing to do. No, Jerry, I've given it a lot of thought, and I'm convinced it was the only thing I could have done. I certainly didn't expect Mel to react so angrily, but there was no way I could have kept that letter to myself and pretended that nothing had happened. Now I can only hope that she'll cool down, and we can talk things over when she gets home. You say that so nicely, Adam, but I still feel guilty about what happened. So what are you going to do for the rest of this week? I don't know, Jerry. I don't see any way for Mel and I to move on if we don't talk about what happened. Maybe I'll wait a few days and then try calling her. No, Adam. That's the one thing you shouldn't do. She already thinks you don't trust her. If you try to contact her after she explicitly told you not to, it will only prove to her that she was right. Yeah, I guess I realize that. But I feel helpless as hell. I don't know any way to find out who sent the letter. The only thing I can do while she's gone is keep trying to figure out who this Professor Bellingham guy is. That makes sense. If you could find him, maybe he could fill in some blanks for you. Over the next few days, Adam repeatedly tried to solve the mystery of the anonymous letter. Despite his lack of success, he was still convinced that Bellingham was somehow connected to the university. And then it hit him. Maybe the reason I can't find this guy is because he's an alumnus, not a faculty member. Well, I'm an alumnus too, so maybe the Alumni Relations Office can help. When he called and identified himself as an alumnus, Adam was immediately transferred to the development office. The staff member who answered the phone wrote down all of Adam's address, phone number, and email information. He then asked how much Adam wanted to contribute to the alumni fund. No, I'm not calling to make a contribution. I'm trying to track down Professor Bellingham. I think he might be an alumnus. The man paused while he checked several databases. I'm sorry, sir, but we don't seem to have ever had an alumnus by that name. Really? What about graduate schools? I checked those as well. Maybe he's not a graduate. Maybe he went for a year or two and then dropped out or transferred. The guy seemed to lose interest. I'm afraid I can't help you. We only have alumni in our database. Is there anything else I can do for you? After Adam declined, he hung up and cursed in frustration. Damn it. All I'd accomplished was getting called for the next alumni fundraising campaign. After making no progress on the phone or on the line, he carved out an hour of free time the next day to visit the Graduate School of Business. When he got there, it was nearly empty. It's spring break, dumbass. Adam cursed to himself. But there were a few people there, and he pestered from one office to another, asking for information about Professor Bellingham. Finally, an assistant dean appeared before him. Sir, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to leave. If you don't comply, we will be forced to call campus security. Adam apologized and hurriedly withdrew, more upset than ever. Back in his office, he sat down heavily at his desk. After another futile check of his email, he dropped his head onto his hands. What am I going to do now? At that moment, the phone rang in his office. An unfamiliar voice asked, Are you the young man who is looking for Professor Bellingham? When Adam confirmed that he was, the man continued, My name is Dr. Avery Mayfair. I am a member of the faculty of the Graduate School of Business and may be able to help you. But first let me ask you why you are trying to find Professor Bellingham. Adam was hesitant to discuss his situation with a stranger, but desperation took over, and he briefly told Dr. Mayfair his reasons for searching for the missing professor. When he finished, his interlocutor made a thoughtful sound. I see. I overheard you questioning me at school today, and the way you phrased some of the questions made me wonder if there might be something like that. Anyway, I think I can put your mind at ease, young man. 2 years ago, Bellingham was an adjunct professor at the high school. He was a worthy instructor, but unfortunately, the enrollment in his course fell below the minimum requirements. His course was canceled, and his contract was not renewed. I see, Adam said. Does that mean that... That's not all, Dr. Mayfair continued. At the beginning of the current school year, I received a message from Professor Bellingham. He wrote to inform me that he had found a job at Black Hills State University in South Dakota. He's in South Dakota? Asked Adam in surprise. Quite right, confirmed the professor. And there's something else you might want to know about. In the same message, Professor Bellingham informed me of his recent marriage to his longtime roommate, Harold. Harold? That means that Bellingham? Exactly. Dr. Mayfair, thank you so much for your call. I still don't understand why anyone would want to send me such a treacherous letter, but now I'm sure it was a lie. I was hoping I could reassure you. Sir, may I ask one more question? Why did you decide to call me? Don't get me wrong. I'm very grateful, but I'm just a stranger to you. The tone of the professor's voice changed. I don't mind telling you, young man. Many years ago, something similar happened to me. My wife left me to run off with her lover, so I deeply sympathize with anyone who may be facing a similar situation. Fortunately, in this case, the warning you received turned out to be false, so I'm glad I was able to dispel your doubts. But, as you can imagine, I have very strong feelings about anyone who interferes in a marriage. If the accusation were true, I would not hesitate to inform you of it. Thank you, sir. You have no idea how much I appreciate what you've done. In the evening, Adam called Jerry to tell her the good news. I still don't know who is trying to destroy my marriage, but I now know for sure that Mel is not having an affair with Professor Bellingham. Are you sure you can trust this Dr. Mayfair? Absolutely. I checked him out after the call and found that he works in the business department. He's an older man, probably in his 60s, and appears to be highly respected. But just to make sure, I also checked Bellingham on the Black Hills website. And sure enough, he was there. That's great, Adam. You must be very relieved. Yes, I am. But now my problem is what to tell Mel when she gets home. That's easy, Adam. From what you told me about your confrontation with her, she never gave you a chance to talk. When she returns, tell her that you never had any doubts about her. Tell her that you had already found out about Bellingham, that you tracked him down as soon as you got the letter. But because she reacted so violently, you didn't get a chance to tell her about it. If you play your cards right, Adam, she'll apologize to you. I don't know, Jerry. It wasn't really like that. He heard the smile in her voice. Come on, Adam. Is it so bad to embellish the truth a little to get what you want? Melanie. On Sunday, before heading back into town, Melanie surprised Jerry with a phone call. Hi, girlfriend. I just wanted to check in with you before coming home to see how Adam is doing. I'm a little nervous about what I'm going to face when I get there. The only thing I know for sure is that you owe me a great debt of gratitude for everything I did for you while you were away with your affair. Through my help and good fortune, you will be able to return to your husband, and your marriage will be in better shape than ever. She then proceeded to recount the past week, ending with what Adam had learned of Bellingham's whereabouts. If you play your cards right, when you get home, Adam will apologize to you. You will apologize to him, and everything in your life will be back to normal. A pause hung on the line. What if I don't want things to go back to normal? I don't understand, Melanie. What are you saying? It's just that last week I had a blast. Carl, the guy I was with, is so much fun. Melanie's voice became a little hoarse. And most importantly, he's a fantastic lover. I haven't had that many orgasms in years. Anyway, I'm not ready for my little adventure to end yet. I want to keep seeing him, at least until the semester is over. Come on, Jerry, you have to help me find a way that will help me. Whoa, Melanie, you've already taken a big risk by going out with this guy for a week. If you try to keep the affair going here in town, you're taking a big risk, girl. Maybe, but you have to admit, your little plan worked perfectly. I bet you'll figure out a way for me to do it again. Come on, Jerry, please. This guy is really hot. I was afraid something like this might happen. There was a long pause. Okay, Jerry said slowly. I can come up with a plan to do what you want. But you have to realize that you'll jeopardize your marriage to Adam. He's a good guy, Melanie. He's hardworking, loyal, and a real family man. Men like him don't come along every day. Are you sure you want to risk it all for a little pleasure between the sheets? Melanie hummed. You got me at, I can come up with a plan. Okay, but don't say I didn't warn you. Now here's what you need to do. Do you still have that email account you created? Of course. You told me to keep it active. Good, because you need to send another email from Good Friend. Only this time you're going to send the message to yourself. to your regular email account. Okay, I guess. What does the new email say? It's exactly the same as the last one, only this time you write that Adam is having an affair with me. What? But that's not true, and Adam knows it. How does that help? It's simple. The first letter accused you of having an affair. Adam found out that you couldn't have been unfaithful with Professor Bellingham, but he may still have doubts about your fidelity. Wait a minute, Jerry. You said that Bellingham's letter would give me freedom in my relationship with Carl. It did. But now that he gets the second letter, he won't have any doubts. He has already proved that you were not having an affair with Bellingham, and he knows for a fact that he is not having an affair with me. Obviously, good friend is an absolute liar, which means Adam no longer has any reason to doubt you, which means you can do whatever you want without raising Adam's suspicions. A silence hung on the line. Then Melanie exclaimed, Jerry, you're a genius. I don't know how you came up with all this, but you just gave me a hall pass that I can use for the rest of the semester. There are 2 more things you need to do, Melanie. First, make sure Adam tells me about the second letter. Okay, but why? Because that way I can reinforce the idea that you are trustworthy and this unknown friend is not. Oh, that's good. He really cares about you, so he'll listen to your advice. What else? After you send the message to yourself, don't forget to log out of your good friend email account. You don't want Adam to accidentally find it. Oh my gosh, no. In fact, you should probably log out of both email accounts when you're not using them. You don't want Adam to find love notes from Carl. I warned Carl never to email me, but that's still good advice. Better to be safe than sorry. Adam. Returning home from work that evening, Adam was dismayed to find Melanie crying. Things had been going so well between them since she had returned from Florida that the sight of her upset took him by surprise. What's wrong, Mel? What's wrong? He asked, rushing over to her. Oh, Adam, it's starting all over again, she said tearfully, holding out a copy of the letter to him. Son of a bitch, he reprimanded, reading the accusatory message. You know that's a lie, don't you? Of course I do, honey. I know you'd never cheat on me, just as I wouldn't cheat on you. And even if you did cheat, I know it would never be with Jerry. She's such a good friend to both of us that she would never do anything like that. Damn it. Someone is still trying to cause us problems, and I have no idea who or why. There has to be some way to track these things down. She hesitantly looked up at him. Are you going to tell Jerry about this? Do you think I should? I think you should. Like it or not, she's involved now. It wouldn't be fair to her not to let her know. The next morning when Adam called, Jerry answered in a friendly manner. So how are the 2 lovebirds doing today? Adam's tone was solemn. We're doing well, Jerry, but something new has come up that I need to talk to you about. Can you meet up after work? Actually, I'm planning on working from home this afternoon. Would you mind coming over to my house? Sure, that's fine. I'll come by between 6:30 and 7. Opening the door to her apartment that evening, Jerry immediately noticed the solemn expression on Adam's face. What's the matter, Adam? I've been worried ever since you called. He shook his head. I'm sorry, Jerry, but you seem to have gotten caught up in this whole Melanie and me thing. When she looked at him perplexed, he held out a copy of the last letter to her. As she read it, she looked at Adam in despair. But this is ridiculous. We're not having an affair. I would never do that to Melanie. I hope she knows that. He nodded. She knows. In fact, she told me the same thing. Jerry shook her head in confusion. I'm glad to hear that. But what do you think it all means? I think it means that someone wants very badly to stir up trouble between Melanie and me. First Professor Bellingham's warning, now this. The only thing I can think of is that I have an enemy, possibly a business rival. Only I have no idea who that might be. But anyway, since it seems to be about you now, Mel and I thought we should warn you. She nodded. I'm glad you did, Adam. You're always so thoughtful. But I don't know what we can do about it, unless the mystery man does something blatant or makes a mistake. I don't think calling the police would do any good. I agree, Jerry, but it's so frustrating. I'm sick of all this mess. I just wish whoever it is would leave us all alone. How is Melanie taking it? She's very upset. When I got home, she was in tears. I'm not surprised, especially after the ordeal the first one caused. Look, Adam, I think Melanie is very fragile right now. Because of all this, and the fact that she's so close to graduation, I think she's just on edge. You have to protect her as much as you can. Do you think we should both just block all mail from that account? That might be a mistake. If he sends anything else, I think you'll want to know about it. Yeah, you're right. But how do I protect Mel? For starters, if you get another one of those damned letters, I wouldn't tell her about it, at least not right away. For that matter, I think you should check her email on her laptop every chance you get. If she gets another email, you can forward it to her email before she sees it. That way, you won't have to involve her. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. He stood up. I'm sorry you had to be dragged into all this. If that's supposed to be an apology, I don't need one. I care about you a lot, and I'll do anything to help. He smiled gratefully. I'd better get home and see how Melanie is doing. He started to walk away, then turned, hugged Jerry, and kissed her cheek. Thank you for being such a good friend. Having you by my side during all of this means a lot to me. When Adam got home, he was pleasantly surprised to find Melanie in a much more cheerful mood. The next morning, she was even more chipper and got up early to have breakfast with her husband. This is a real treat, Melanie. I don't get to see you that often before I go to work. Well, I didn't want you to leave this morning without being able to say, I love you, she told him, giving him a kiss. By the way, she added, I wanted to be sure to let you know that I'm going to a lecture on campus tonight. A couple of the girls and I are going to grab a bite to eat after it, so I'll probably be home pretty late. Sure, Mel, that's okay. We have plenty of leftovers in the fridge, so I can grab a snack here. Thanks, sweetie. I'll probably come home after school to drop off my school stuff and change. If I don't see you then, have a good night. Knowing Melanie wouldn't be home, Adam stayed late at the office. There was a change for the better in the business. A large potential client had really liked the samples of the new product, and Adam hoped they would place a trial order. At least something was becoming clearer. Now I just have to figure out who's playing mail games with me and Mel. He was still thinking about the mysterious good friend when he entered the house. Heading into the bedroom, he noticed Melanie's laptop standing on the table. Apparently, she didn't need it for the lecture. And then he remembered Jerry's offer. He wondered if she had logged into her email yet. If so, he'd have to see if she'd gotten anything new from the creep. The laptop came to life as he opened the case. The email page wasn't open, so he clicked on the Gmail link to see if she was logged in. A window opened, prompting him to select an account. He saw Melanie's email, but she was logged out, so he started to close Gmail. No sooner had he done so than he noticed a second account under her regular email, and when he took a closer look at it, he froze in bewilderment. The name of the account was Good Friend. What the hell? He exploded, looking at it. He tried to open it, but Google demanded, enter password. Not knowing the password, he closed the tab and then slumped in his chair, trying to make sense of what he saw. How could she have an email account with that name? I know Gmail doesn't allow two users to have the same name, but that would mean that Melanie was the one sending those other emails. Why would she do that? Why would she send me an anonymous email accusing her of having an affair? The answer came to him only a moment later. It must have been a diversion. She wanted me to chase after some gay professor in South Dakota because she was having an affair with someone else. Then another thought hit him like a punch to the gut. Her trip to Florida. When I showed her the letter, she pretended to be very upset with me. She said she was going to visit her mom, that she needed to be away from me. Now I wonder if she even saw her mom. He quickly pulled out his cell phone and pressed his mother-in-law's number. When the elderly woman answered, he spoke to her politely for a minute and then said, Say, Melanie and I were thinking of coming to visit you next month. Would it be too soon to see you again? Too soon? I haven't seen you in ages. Please come back when you can. He gritted his teeth in anger. Okay, fine. We'll get back to you when we figure out a date. Saying goodbye, he broke the connection and cursed. Son of a bitch. I wonder where Melanie had really gone. More importantly, I wonder who she left with. Son of a bitch. Then he remembered the last letter Melanie had gotten. What was it? Damn it, it must be another distraction to get his mind off her while she went to lectures with her girlfriends. Why that sneaky, lying bitch? Nay. He wondered what she wore when she left for the evening. He hurried back to the bedroom and began rummaging through his wife's underwear. He was having trouble remembering everything that belonged to Melanie, and he was about to give up. But a sudden suspicion gripped him, and he went back to check one more item, the garter belt. It was missing. He angrily looked for a matching bra and panties, but neither was there. Gone out to dinner with her girlfriends, huh? He put everything back and went back to the kitchen table to think. So you like sabotage and deception? Well, two can play that game. When Melanie got home after midnight, he was still seething with anger, but pretended to be asleep when she tiptoed into the bedroom. When he heard the shower turn on, he wished he hadn't gotten up and confronted her. Who knew going to lectures was such a sweaty job, he thought bitterly. The next morning, Adam got up very early and left for work, before Melanie even woke up. Next to the coffee pot, he left a note for his wife. I hope you enjoyed the lecture yesterday. I had to leave work early for a meeting, and I may be late today, so don't wait up for me. It was indeed a busy day for Adam, but his meetings were not with clients or suppliers. At lunch, he did a little shopping and then went home with some of his purchases to make some arrangements. After that, he went to 2 more meetings that took up the entire second half of the day. When everything was done, he went to dinner and a movie to pass the time. Melanie was already asleep when he climbed into bed, trying not to wake her. However, when she woke up the next morning, she found her husband already waiting for her. I thought you left for work a long time ago, dear, she said, gratefully accepting the cup of coffee he held out to her. I wanted to be sure to see you this morning because I have to catch a flight to Detroit at noon. I'll be gone for a few days calling potential clients. That's new. You don't get to travel that often. So when do you think you'll be back? Not until Friday night at the earliest. And if all goes well, I might not leave there until Saturday morning. Will you be okay here while I'm gone? She gave him a bright smile. Don't worry about me. I'm sure I can find something to do while you're gone. Good. Just try to stay away from our good friend while I'm gone. Her face darkened. That's not funny, Adam. I'm sorry. You're right. It's not funny. Then he waved her off, picked up his suitcase, and headed for the car. As he pulled out of the driveway, he frowned. She didn't even notice that I didn't say, I love you. I bet she's already making plans to get back together with her lover. Now I just need a little distraction to make sure her meeting takes place here at home. Instead of driving to the airport, Adam left the office on his lunch break and drove to the university. Parking near the campus, he walked briskly toward the Graduate School of Business. He had shed his usual sports jacket and slacks. He was now dressed in jeans and a sweatshirt. A cheap backpack was slung over his shoulder. Without raising his head, he headed into the reading room of the School of Business library. The few students paid no attention to him as he nonchalantly walked behind a rack of periodicals. Once out of sight, he pulled out a string of the largest firecrackers he could buy, lit the extra-long wick attached to them, and tossed them into a metal recycling bin. He then walked carelessly to the nearest door, propped it open with his backpack, and walked out. Once outside, he pulled out the cell phone he had purchased the day before and called campus security. Come quickly, there's a shooting at the School of Business, he shouted excitedly when his call was answered. I think there might be more than one. They're still shooting. Then he picked up the phone toward the library, and a few seconds later, a series of fireworks erupted. He cut the connection and hurried across campus to his car as sirens wailed and people started scattering in all directions. An hour later, he saw his wife's car pull up to his driveway. Then a second car pulled up behind her, and a male figure emerged from it. In moments of danger, there's no place like home, Adam muttered with an unhappy chuckle. He then got into his car and drove to the motel where he had booked a room. Late that night, he drove around his neighborhood one more time to make sure the other car was still in his driveway. He then returned to his room and tried to sleep. When the couple left the house the next morning, they were surprised to find Adam leaning against the stranger's car door. "Oh my God, Carl, that's my husband!" Melanie gasped as she recognized him. "I thought you were in Detroit," she whispered, and immediately faltered when she realized how that sounded. "Honey, things aren't what they seem. Carl just stopped by to—" "Just stop, Melanie. Every time you open your mouth, all you do is lie. I don't want to hear it anymore." He made a grimace and gestured at the two of them. "That's exactly what it looks like. I know you both spent the night here, and I have a tape of everything you said and did together. So stop talking and listen." He grabbed the manila envelope tucked under his arm and held it out to her. "I'm suing you for divorce on grounds of adultery. Inside, you will find the name and number of my attorney. Find your own attorney and have him contact mine. But don't try to contact me, because after what you've done, I have no intention of seeing or talking to you again." "No, dear, don't say that. It was just a mistake. A one-time mistake. We can work things out, I promise." "I said stop lying," he growled. "It's not a one-time thing. You've been having fun with him for weeks. And it certainly wasn't a mistake. You planned it all out ahead of time. I know you're the one who sent that email to create a distraction and spend spring break together wherever you go. And by the way, your mom wants to know why you haven't visited her lately. I guess you've been so engrossed in that piece of shit," he gestured at the sullen man, "that you haven't even stopped by to see her." He paused to turn his attention to Melanie's lover. "Oh yeah, that reminds me." Adam quickly pulled out his cell phone and snapped a few pictures of the frightened man. When he realized what was going on, the man growled, clenched his fists, and stepped towards Adam in a threatening manner. Adam immediately reached into his jacket pocket and extended his arm far enough to reveal the butt of an automatic rifle. He said calmly. "I wouldn't do that if I were you. I have no intention of ruining my life by killing you, but I would be glad if you would give me the opportunity to shoot you in self-defense." "Whoa, whoa!" The man put his hands up and took a step back. Adam turned to Melanie with a chuckle. "Sounds like your boyfriend is a lover, not a fighter." Then his voice turned cold and cruel. "Take what you need from the house and then get out, Mel. Don't be here when I get back. I wasn't kidding when I said I didn't want to see you again." "Adam, please," she pleaded. "I never meant for things to turn out this way." He ignored her and walked to his car as she sank to the driveway and began to sob into her hands. On the way to the office, Adam stopped at a dumpster and tossed his phone in there as well as the toy machine he had in his pocket. "It's a good thing they make these things so realistic," he said with a wicked chuckle. Back at his desk, Adam sent an email on his cell phone with one of the pictures he had taken. To his surprise, he got a call back a few minutes later. "This is Dr. Mayfair. Did you just email me the picture?" "Dr. Mayfair, I'm sorry to impose on you again, but do you happen to recognize the man in the picture? I believe his name is Carl." "Is the woman standing next to him your wife?" "My ex-wife, I'm afraid." "A very beautiful woman. I think she was in one of my classes last year. As for the man next to her, I do recognize him. His name is Carl Mannheim. He happens to be one of my counselors." "Carl Mannheim. That's good to hear, doctor. I'm afraid I have a score to settle with your Mr. Mannheim." "So he was the serpent that spoiled your Garden of Eden." "Yes, in a way, but I'm afraid my Eve was far from innocent." "I see. That's very interesting. Well, I'm glad I was able to help you, although I'm sorry the outcome was not what you wanted." "Thank you, doctor. I appreciate your time and your help, even though it turned out that way." "Well, good luck to you, my boy, and don't give up hope. Things always work out for the best. Trust someone who's been through it and made it to the other side." Adam, 2 months later. Adam sat across from his lawyer and pondered. "Have you heard from Melanie's attorney yet? How are things going with the divorce?" Yes, I spoke to Hannah Montrose yesterday, and today she sent a counteroffer to Melanie. The good news is that Melanie has decided not to fight the divorce anymore. Apparently, after Hannah heard the tapes you made at your house, she convinced your wife not to risk having them played in court. But the bad news is that now that Melanie has resigned herself to the fact that the marriage is over, she seems intent on getting as much out of you as she can get financially. Damn. She lies and cheats me, and when she gets caught, she expects me to pay her for the privilege. It's just not fair. So what does my cheating wife want? Normally, I would expect to see a request for a division of all your property. But in this case, there's not much to divide. You rent out the house, you have no retirement plan, and very little savings. The only asset you have is a stake in your business, which is operating at a loss. Apparently, she expects it to go bust, so she's only asking the court for alimony. I certainly appreciate her vote of confidence in me, Adam sarcastically quipped. So how much alimony does she want? A lot more than we offered. The lawyer held out a sheet to his client. Adam looked at it and gasped. This is ridiculous. She knows I can't afford it. If I have to shell out that amount of money every month, I'm basically liquidating my business to pay her. What can I say? Melanie refuses to negotiate, so that's exactly what Hannah will offer Judge Abernathy. Well, I'm not going to give Melanie that much money without a fight. I'll have to take my chances in court. Okay, Adam, I see where you're going with this. But remember, Judge Abernathy has absolute power. You will be left with whatever he decides. Almost exactly a month later, Adam sat in the courtroom and waited anxiously. After both attorneys had presented their arguments, Judge Abernathy called a recess. How do you think it's going? Whispered Adam to his attorney. I have no idea. The case could go either way, or the judge could make some sort of compromise decision. A few seconds later, they were ordered to stand as Judge Abernathy returned to the courtroom. When they were seated again, the judge called for opposing counsel to approach the bench. I assume your clients have not changed their position on the financial settlement? Both attorneys exchanged glances. No, Your Honor. Very well. Before ruling, I'd like to ask Mrs. Weatherby a few questions. Hannah Montrose looked startled, but then smiled and gestured for Melanie to step forward. Everything will be fine, she whispered to her client. Just remember to address him as Your Honor. Adam's attorney took his seat and leaned toward Adam. It's usually not a good sign when the judge wants to hear more from the other side. Adam watched with regret as his soon-to-be ex-wife made her appearance in court. The suit she was wearing was a conservative cut, but fitted enough to favorably accentuate her figure. He noticed the judge watching Melanie and shook his head. I think we're done for, he whispered to his attorney. The judge looked over the papers in front of him and then turned to face the woman sitting in the witness box. Now, Mrs. Weatherby, it appears that the only issue separating the two of you is the amount of alimony to be awarded. Your proposal calls for an amount considerably higher than what your husband has offered. Quite correct, Your Honor. And what is your justification for the amount you are proposing? We are asking for a higher amount in recognition of my years of marriage and the fact that I will have to start my life virtually from scratch, Your Honor. I see. However, Mr. Weatherby claims that his only source of income is the company he founded, which is still operating at a loss. What makes you think Mr. Weatherby can afford the financial support you've offered? Your Honor, we contend that Adam was intentionally reducing his true income by siphoning funds into his business. He could easily pay the alimony I am requesting by simply modestly adjusting his current level of investments. The audited financial statement shows a negative cash flow. Your Honor, Adam's accountants can manipulate the numbers to show any result they want. The judge raised his eyebrows. Are you saying the financial statements are fraudulent? Melanie's attorney turned pale and shook her head emphatically. Melanie noticed this and quickly pulled herself together. No, Your Honor, not at all. It's just that income can be deferred and investments can be accelerated and still stay within generally accepted accounting principles. He's investing too much in his company, that's all. Adam felt his blood pressure rising. He leaned toward her and whispered angrily, What a bitch. She knows it's not true. She's just trying to pressure me to get what she wants regardless of the consequences. Meanwhile, Judge Abernathy was reviewing the case summary lying in front of him. So far, we've focused on your husband's investment in his business, Mrs. Weatherby. From what I can see, it appears that Mr. Weatherby has also invested heavily in you, or at least in your education. If you're referring to my MBA, Your Honor, it's true that Adam paid for my education, but I was the one who did the hard work in all the courses, took all the tests, and wrote my thesis. I've worked day and night for the last 2 years, including last summer. And you just graduated, is that correct? Yes, sir. I graduated with honors, she said proudly. He nodded. Very good, Mrs. Weatherby, that's all. You may sit down. When Melanie was again seated next to her attorney, Judge Abernathy raised his glasses and considered both sides for a while. Having heard all the evidence, I award Mrs. Weatherby the full amount of financial support she has requested. Adam shuddered, and Melanie leaned over and hugged her attorney, but the judge wasn't finished yet. This financial settlement amounts to a monthly sum that will allow Mrs. Weatherby to live quite comfortably without working for the foreseeable future. However, she has just completed a college degree that should prepare her for a high-paying position in business. To give her extra motivation to use her expensive education, I am awarding Mrs. Weatherby only 6 months of alimony. 6 months? You can't do that, shrieked Melanie. I can, and I already have, replied the judge. Then he banged his gavel on the wooden block. Next case. Edit. The lawyer hurriedly pulled Melanie away from the bench, though she was still trying to appeal the decision. Only the appearance of the big bailiff convinced the unhappy young woman to stop her actions. I only have to pay child support for 6 months? I can live with that, Adam said to his attorney as they stood up and started to leave the courtroom. How about that? Replied Adam's attorney cheerfully. I thought we lost when the judge picked her number, but I guess he wasn't too impressed with the way she tried to milk the blood out of you. Still, not many husbands do so well in divorce court. I wonder what made him take you so lightly. You don't think the fact that she didn't contest the adultery charge was a factor, do you? He shouldn't have taken that into account in determining financial compensation. Adam glanced around once more to watch Melanie continue to argue with her attorney, and grinned. Whatever it is, I'm happy with the way things turned out. At that moment, he was grabbed by the arm, and Adam turned around to see an older man he had never met before, but who seemed vaguely familiar. I wanted to introduce myself, the gray-haired man explained. I'm Professor Mayfair. Adam grabbed his hand and shook it firmly. Professor, it's an unexpected pleasure to meet you in person, sir. Thank you again for your assistance. What brings you to court today? The elderly man smiled. After our chat, I became interested in your case and decided to stop by to see how things turned out. Then his smile grew wider. It also gave me the opportunity to have a word with an old friend of mine, Judge Abernathy. He shook Adam's hand once more. I'm glad things worked out well for you. If I can ever help again, I'd be happy to do so. He winked. We divorced husbands have to stick together. As the professor walked away, Adam looked up to follow him. I wonder, he muttered, then shook his head. Out of the corner of his eye, he thought he spotted Jerry in the crowd of onlookers, but when he turned to look, she wasn't there. Melanie, 30 months later. She pressed a familiar number on her cell phone, and when she was answered, she hesitantly said, Hi, Jerry, it's me, Melanie. Melanie, what a surprise. I haven't heard from you since you moved to Florida. How have you been doing? Honestly, it's been a pretty rough few years. As a matter of fact, that's why I called. I really needed to talk to a friendly voice. Sure. Tell me what's going on. Are you working right now? Actually, that's part of the problem. I thought that with my MBA, I wouldn't have a problem finding a good job. But it turns out that employers here are more interested in experience than an academic degree. Most of the jobs I was offered were internships or practicums. Oh dear, that doesn't sound very lucrative. So where did you end up? When the child support stopped, I got pretty desperate. I even took a job as an administrative assistant for a while, but it was awful. So now I've started a new career in financial counseling. In fact, that's one of the reasons I called. I can do an analysis of your financial situation if that's okay with you. You'd be surprised how many people neglect this sort of thing. There was a brief pause. Oh, Melanie, I'd love to help you, but my finances are in good shape right now, and I'm quite confident about tomorrow. I really don't think I need any help. I'm sorry. It's okay, Jerry. I hear that a lot, but I thought I'd give it a try. It's so hard to get a foothold in this business. I had to move in with my mother to cut costs. You live with your mother? What happened to you and Carl? Don't even mention that bastard's name. We broke up just a few months after we got here. Separated? What happened? Oh, Jerry, it was awful. Carl dropped out of school without ever getting his MBA. I don't know exactly what happened, but his advisor rejected his master's thesis and told Carl he'd have to start over. Carl became very bitter and decided not to go back. He refused to look for a job and hung around our apartment all day, playing video games and drinking. After a while, he started taking his resentment out on me. It got so bad that at one point I had to call the police on him. Oh, Melanie, how awful for you. I think you're lucky to be rid of him. And look on the bright side. Now you're free to go out and meet new people and have fun and dance whenever you want. I remember how much you missed all that when you were married. Melanie sighed. Nightclubs and parties take money, Jerry, and I don't have a lot of spare cash right now. And to tell you the truth, when I do go out, it's not nearly as glamorous and exciting as I used to think it was. And actually, I remember a girlfriend warning me that there are a lot more creeps in the world than good guys. She paused, but when Jerry didn't say anything, Melanie decided to change the subject. What about you, Jerry? How are you doing? Are you seeing anyone special these days? Actually, my situation has changed quite a bit, Mel. What's more, I'm getting married next month. Married? That's amazing. And who's the lucky guy? Do I know him? Yes, actually, you do, actually. This is Adam, Melanie. Adam and I are engaged. My Adam? You're engaged to my Adam? You can't do that. I'm afraid I already have. We'll have a small civil ceremony in the backyard of our new home, and then we'll fly to Paris for our honeymoon. New house? A honeymoon in Paris? Adam can't afford all that. Not only has my situation changed dramatically, but Adam's has as well. The same month you moved to Florida, he got that big order he'd been working on for so long. After that, his business really took off. Apparently, his new product is just what the automotive industry needs. And that's not all. Earlier this year, Adam received an offer from a major manufacturer to buy his business for a fortune. He accepted, and the deal will be finalized next week. So, as you can see, you don't have to worry about our financial future. Melanie could only stammer, but Jerry didn't relent, and now her tone had changed. You know, all of this could have been yours, Melanie, but you weren't content with what you had. I warned you from the beginning that you were risking everything by having your little affair. I also warned you that there would be women who would gladly pick up the pieces if your marriage fell apart. But you were the one who encouraged me. You were the one who figured out how I could. Suddenly, Melanie's voice rose with shock. Oh my God, Jerry, it was you. You planned the whole thing, right from the beginning. All I did was tell you about a harmless little fantasy. You manipulated me into acting on it. You tricked me into believing I could get away with having an affair. Really, Melanie, you're exaggerating. I didn't force you to do anything you didn't want to do. All I did was give you enough rope to hang yourself. I can't believe it. I bet it was you who told Adam about Carl. You're smarter than that, Melanie. Think about it. If I told Adam, he'd wonder how I knew. That wouldn't have been very smart of me, would it? On the other hand, I told you not to delete your secret Gmail account and advised Adam to check his email. I use Gmail all the time, so I was sure he'd see it there. So no, Melanie, I didn't tell Adam about your lover. All I did was arrange the dominoes so they fell where I wanted them to. I can't believe this. I trusted you, Jerry. I thought you were my friend. Jerry laughed. You know what they say? All's fair in love and war. You're not getting away with this, bitch. I'll make sure Adam finds out what you've done. What a schemer you really are. He'll definitely call off the wedding once he finds out the truth. I'm sorry, Melanie, but I'm afraid I must cut our conversation short. Adam and I have plans for this evening, and I want to look especially good for him. And don't you dare call back. I'll block your number as soon as I hang up. You sneaky, sneaky bitch. Adam, 30 months and 1 day later. Jerry greeted her husband-to-be with a kiss when he returned from work. Adam kissed her back and then pulled a piece of paper out of his jacket. You won't believe who sent me a letter today. Melanie. Really? Said Jerry carelessly. I'd almost forgotten about her. What does she want? Adam looked at his fiancée, CE, expressionlessly. Actually, she wrote to warn me about you. She says you planned everything that happened just to keep Mel and me apart. That's pretty wild. Can I see it? Asked Jerry. He held out a printout to her. She scanned it quickly and then handed it back to him with a smile. Poor Melanie. She could have followed through with her little jealous fantasy if she'd done one more thing. He looked at her curiously. She winked at him. She should have signed it good friend. It took him a few minutes to stop laughing. The end. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. So subscribe to my channel and watch the next video. As I walked past the conference room, my life went from shit to a damn borax. Scottish for truly a huge damn mess. I saw Bill showing pictures on the big screen from the wedding he attended yesterday. What caught my attention was what was in the background. My nemesis Darren Bryant was hugging my wife Judith as they headed to the hotel on the trail. Bill knew Judith, so he knew what was going on. No one said anything to me about it. Friends and co-workers. I realized from the laughter of the group that they had all seen it and already knew. Not only that, it was old news. I didn't stop. If they did see me, they didn't give me any sign. I dismissed the idea of them seeing me and laughing at me. I found out later that it was the damn truth. Donald Harvey, our manager, had me covering Bryant all the time. That day I had to cover him again. Harvey canceled my vacation because Bryant had an emergency class. Judith left on her own. Or did I think she did now? I spent the rest of the day not doing any work but plotting revenge against my cheating wife, that bastard, and my so-called co-workers. I didn't want to work here a minute longer than I had to. I went to HR and asked about my notice period and annual leave. I knew I was due at least 7 weeks. It turned out that Harvey hadn't canceled my vacation. I showed Stella his letter canceling his vacation and explaining the reason. She just looked at me sadly. Even she freaking knew. I was absolutely furious. I discussed everything with her and her roommate, the financial controller. I am highly organized. It makes my job so much easier. Maybe it is right that I suffer from OCD. I keep records of all my work and expenses. I was able to prove that Harvey was falsifying records to stop payments to me, which were then transferred to Bryant. Eventually, they were able to confirm that I was due 9 weeks of 3 days annual leave. I was owed over £17,000, which was paid to Bryant. Stella had printed everything out. I copied them down as I didn't trust anyone else. My termination period was 12 weeks as I had specialized skills. I went back to my desk and wrote my resignation letter. I didn't give it to Harvey, whom I just stared at until he was completely embarrassed. I had always been obedient. The only time I complained was when I had to fill in for Bryant. I went to meet with the CEO, David Bennett, one of the members of the family that owned the company. His secretary told me he was busy. I told her I needed to see him urgently. Otherwise, I would contact a lawyer. She was very surprised at my tone. It was a very different me. She spoke to him again. He told her that he would be free in 20 minutes and for me to come in then. I knew from his tone that something was wrong. Later, when I thought about it, he tried not to laugh. I went back in and he kept me waiting. 10 minutes later, he let me in. There was no handshake. Sorry for the wait. Well, Adam, what's got you so riled up? He smirked. I was actually calm, which surprised me. Here's my resignation letter. I've been shit on enough already. I've had my vacation canceled supposedly in the best interest of the firm. Everyone laughs behind my back when Darren Bryant entertains my wife, and I have to cover his work while he does it. Harvey forges payroll so Bryant gets paid for my work, so you owe me over £17,000. You'll see those invoices there. Given my annual leave, despite Harvey trying to give it to Bryant, I have just over 2 weeks to work. I'll work them off, but I'm not going to cover Bryant. He could get in trouble. He could get in a very serious accident. Bennett was not only silent, he was gloating. I could tell by the look on his face that he was thrilled with how I felt. You didn't know Bryant was entertaining your wife, did you? Dude, you're damn blind. He brags about it every damn time. I'll handle your money, now get out of here. Well, I knew where I stood. I'd have 2 weeks to get back at all these cunts, especially Bryant. I walked out of that office and his secretary almost shit herself. If I was angry before, it was obvious from the look on my face that I was looking for trouble. I walked back to my desk. I could see the others watching me, but no one approached me. They had never seen me angry before. I finished my work on time. Harvey made me use my personal phone for work to save the firm money, since my phone could have 2 SIM cards. I took one out and left it on my desk. I didn't give them a second more than they needed. As I left, I saw some people looking at me like I was a stranger. Bill inquired, "For once you're leaving on time, Adam. What's wrong?" "I have an appointment," I replied gruffly, and continued walking. It was late evening on Thursday. Even the banks were open. I walked into the bank, met with the assistant, and opened new accounts in my name only. When she showed me the balance in the joint account that Judith and I maintained, it was very low. I saw missed payments. I asked why it was not being funded from her account as mandated. Judith canceled her mandate 10 months ago. The girl apologized as she should not have told me about it. I told her it was okay and I would not denounce her. The anger I felt was growing. I walked out of the bank and headed home. I needed to think and make a plan. I need to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Adam Holliday, 29 years old, nice looking. I keep myself fit by going to the gym 3 or so nights a week and doing a bit of running. I am a mechanical engineer with high electrical and computer skills, troubleshooting large machines. I work with very expensive computerized machines that many local repairmen don't have the specialized skills for. As a result, I have to travel a lot. I guess I am one of those people who is never seen, who is always in the background. I never stick out, I just do the job damn well. I am, as you've read, taken for a fool. But I'm not. I'm just conscientious and made the damn mistake of trusting the whore and my co-workers at work. I wanted our company to do well. I'll help anyone except Darren Bryant, who I've hated since our childhood paths crossed. I can't call him an asshole since assholes are useful. Judith had long ago treated me like something nasty that she stomped on. Now I knew why. I tried to talk to her, but she always managed to avoid talking to me. She was used to getting her way. At first, I let her do it because I loved her and wanted to see her happy, but lately just to avoid her sharp tongue. I realize it sounds like I'm a spineless weakling, but I always wanted her to have what she wanted. I thought that's what love was all about, making the other person happy. Apparently, in her world, that's not the case. Once home, I headed to my office. I often worked from home as there was less interference. We didn't have children, thankfully, so I had remodeled one room. Tonight, I was going to work on the most important plan of my life. If Judith had had a brief affair with someone else, I might be able to let her convince me to see a psychologist to try to repair the damage done and rebuild our marriage, even though it was unlikely. I tried to talk her into discussing our marital problems, but she was always too busy. However, she knew I hated Bryant with every breath I took, so this was beyond repair. It was a deliberate act designed to hurt me like hell. The fact that it was him hurt more than the fact that she was having fun with someone else, and that was painful enough. After the revelation at the bank, I checked all the bank statements for 2 years. I copied the relevant transactions into an Excel file. I reviewed the credit card bill and did the same. I checked the payments to this hotel against my work schedule and found that there were 6 to 10 per month, no less. Many of them came on days when I was filling in for Bryant at other facilities. I'm sure they laughed that I was paying them for their entertainment. I hoped he paid at least sometimes, but knowing him, I doubted it. So today I was going to one of his jobs when I got a call canceling my order because they had to self-isolate due to the COVID outbreak at the factory. Without that, I wouldn't have gotten into the office to see that picture. I had also covered Bryant the previous day. There were quite a few deals when Judith was on vacation that Harvey made me cancel. One of them involved a photographer. Given the time difference, I thought he might be at work. I called and told the receptionist who I was. I apologized, but we had a fire and lost the pictures he took. Can they stay in his archives? The receptionist checked the records and they are still there. If she printed them out and sent them to me, it would be expensive. But if she emailed them, I could print them myself or have the firm do it. I thanked her and asked her to email them to me. It would be easier for both of us since international shipping can be difficult. I opened the file to all the information I had gathered. The pictures confirmed my suspicions. Bryant's course was to entertain my wife at my expense. One of Judith's perks is having the latest car. She leases them. Last year, she forgot her driver's license and bank cards, so everything was put in my name. Not surprisingly, she hasn't made a single payment on the car. The lease expires in 2 months. I thought that was great. For the next 2 months, I'll have use of my car, but I won't renew the lease. I needed access to her account. When we got married, she wanted her own account so she wouldn't have to explain to me how she spends her money. She works for an advertising agency. So we agreed to keep our own account and pay into a joint account for household needs, council tax, food, utilities, vacations, etc. I changed all passwords for computer, phone, and safe access. I checked that the prenuptial agreement that Judith's father had insisted on was in place. I copied it and saved it in a new folder. I gave it a technical name, which Judith would assume was a working name if she managed to find out my login details. The file itself was given another access password. I put all the documents I would need, including this file, into cloud storage, using a VPN to cover my tracks, so I had access to a copy of everything whenever I needed it. I use a key generator, so no Mom 1 or Mom 2 for me. I counted up all the money Judith owed me. It came out to just over £47,000. She, or rather I, had been paying for this hotel room for 14 months. The vacation alone cost £11,000. We had a joint savings account with £105,000 in it. They were to go towards extending this house. My idea, because it has big rooms and a large plot. Plenty of room for our kids to play when she feels she can have them. We talked about kids before we were married, but she changed her mind soon after and became more career-oriented. If I didn't like it, well, fine. Why did I put up with her crap for so long, I asked myself. She wanted to buy a rabbit hole in a posh neighborhood. I refused, which annoyed the hell out of her. It was probably one of the few times I stubbed my toe. So the house fund went unused. She didn't replenish it for a year either. I added £6,000. Now looking at her wishes, you can tell that if we moved, her name would be put on the property. My house would pay for most of the costs. She could claim a share in this new house when we divorced. A lucky escape. I transferred £105,000 into my new account. If she complained, I would say that her share would cover her debt to me. When I completed all the necessary money movements, I canceled the debit and credit cards of the joint account. I realize now that I should have paid attention to the accounts, but Judith did it all. Why the hell did I trust her, especially considering the way she treats me? When I finished, Judith wasn't home yet, so I put the pizza in the oven. If no one called Bryant, she wouldn't know I was in the loop. If she didn't come home, then they knew. I was just finishing my pizza when she arrived. To say she was shocked would be putting it mildly. She gasped, "I thought you were at the office." I smiled. "I had an appointment, and I left my phone there. No big deal." She relaxed. "I've already eaten. I'm going to take a shower, and almost jogged towards our room. I guessed why. I waited until I heard the sound of the shower. As she entered the room, she dropped her purse on the table as usual. I opened it and pulled out my wallet and cell phone. I logged into the computer under her account. I used her bank card to work with the card reader to access her accounts. She had the ones I knew about as well as 2 accounts that each held over £100,000. I copied all these accounts into my file. I downloaded the contents of her email. I opened her phone. She used the same PIN code on all her devices and sent copies of messages and calls to my file in the same way. I replaced everything in her purse and was sitting down with a cup of tea when she came downstairs. She was dressed rather drab compared to her work clothes. I decided to give her a pep talk. I'm not worth a little fancy dressing up for. She only looked at me in her usual dismissive manner. I'm too tired. Maybe one more night. I laughed. Yeah, why not? It's only been 12 months since you gave me access to your body. I think it's time for us to get a divorce, or I can get your marriage annulled since you're still a virgin. She stared at me, trying to figure out what was behind my words. She wasn't happy, and I didn't care. I continued. Bill was showing pictures from the wedding yesterday in the office when I came in. She looked at me. I didn't think you'd be interested. I didn't think I would. Is this Marion's 3rd wedding? Maybe this time she'll keep her legs shut for someone other than the cool guy who married her. She gave me a hard look. What a nasty thing to say. I've never heard you talk about someone like that before. I added, I heard she was up to some mischief at her bachelorette party. You went and blabbed. She got angry. You don't need to listen to gossip. Everything went off without incident. I let loose another arrow. That's not what the gossip at the water cooler said. I hope she and the rest of the contestants were tested for STDs. Judith left for the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. I've hit a nerve, I thought. I went back to my office and researched the divorce laws. The good news was that I owned the house before we were married, so she had no rights to it. Usually property is divided 50-50 if there are no children. This was good since her 2 major accounts were in my favor. Alimony could be awarded if one spouse earned more than the other. The prenuptial agreement spelled out changes to the standard agreement based on adultery. No alimony was awarded for the innocent party. No claim to other property, such as an automobile. All expenses were placed on the adulterer. I was glad her father insisted on this. I knew I needed more evidence as Judith, Bennett, and Bryant would deny everything. In the morning, I called my old friend Danny, a local plumber. He used to work at this hotel a lot. When we met at the pub, his stories about the things he retrieved from the toilets amused everyone. I went to sleep in the guest room. I wasn't going to give the ice maiden any chance to melt. The next morning, I went to work, and my own work at that. I guessed from Judith's, I thought you were at the office comment that my phone was tapped. I checked my SIM card, but found no tracker on it. When I inserted a working SIM card, I found it hidden as described on the internet. I bought a phone for £20 and put the company's SIM card in it. I left this phone at work. On the way to work, I called Danny. I explained what Judith and Bryant were up to. Danny hates Bryant too. Bryant was the school bully until I beat the crap out of him. Next time he'd be reassigned to the other gender. Danny was going to the hotel that day, so he'd have news for me later. He had an idea for evidence. I was back in the office by 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Work was going smoothly for a change. I went to the finance department and gave them my new account details. I left strict instructions not to share these details with anyone. My tone surprised the girls. I left at 5 in the evening. Danny called and suggested we have a pint of beer later, and I agreed to meet at 8 in our neighborhood. Judith wasn't home, so I made myself some dinner and settled down in front of the TV. She arrived around 7:30 and was surprised to see me again. I told her, I'm off. I have a hot date with a nymphomaniac. Maybe I'll see you Monday. She just looked at me. She smiled. So she's in for a disappointment then. I laughed. Maybe she'll be interested in me and not just herself. I walked away before I wet myself. She was angry. Bullseye. I was really starting to realize that my life was about to change for the better. Danny brought pints and we sat down in the corner, away from the others. Adam, you don't deserve this. You're a stand-up guy. You'll help anyone. No one at your job bothered to tell you that. Screw them. A lot of people hate Bryant. You remember Kate Duncan? He used to pull her hair and call her names at school. She works in a hotel. She's single, very pretty, with the body you dream of. She would never have fun with a married man like me. I told her about them and about you. She's still partial to you for some reason. Oh, yeah. You caught Bryant pulling her off the bench by the hair and beat the crap out of him. I'd never seen you angry before, but that day you looked like nothing was going to stop you. If he tried to hide behind a brick wall, you would have gone through it to get him. No one tried to stop you. They're booked in for next week, Wednesday and Thursday. She'll make sure they get a separate room. There will be a video camera hidden in it to capture them. After they're done, I'll make an emergency call to deal with the clogged toilet in the room. I'll pick up the camera and give you the SD card. It's so small it will fit in the smoke alarm that's on the bed. I told him, I owe you both. He smiled. No, that's what he deserves. I thought Judith had more intelligence. We had a couple more beers each, and I headed home. In the morning, she suggested we go to the car dealership and look for a new car since the lease was coming to an end. You don't mean my new car? It's registered in my name and you haven't paid a dime for it. We can go and I'll tell them I'll return it when the lease expires. She looked completely dumbfounded. She left without waiting for me. She came back 15 minutes later. My debit and credit cards don't work. What have you done? She shouted. I calmly replied, I was checking the account because I was sure I had paid the bill, but I got a letter asking me to pay it. I saw that you haven't paid anything on your house account in a year. I'm not going to support your lifestyle of treating me like crap. I canceled the cards. Use your own goddamn ones. She got even more pissed off. I very rarely swore at her. It must be the bank's mistake, she almost shouted. No, they showed me your order rescinding the mandate. No goddamn mistake. How? She screamed. I called them to find out the reason because I thought it was a mistake. Turns out the mistake was me trusting you with our finances. I felt like she was about to explode. The rest of the weekend we didn't talk. I mowed the grass and tidied up the garden. I painted the decking in front of our bedroom as the smell of decking paint made her sick. Monday at work, I tackled the paperwork. I also drafted emails to all my clients explaining why I would no longer be working at Bennett's after I was officially laid off. I will be looking for a job after that date. Several people tried to poach me, but because of my sense of loyalty, okay, I'll add stupidity, I didn't pursue the change. I sent them just before I left. Access to them was password protected, so no one would find out. I changed all my work codes. Harvey wasn't in the office. I felt cheated. I expected him to pounce on me with accusations that he had fired me and that he had cheated me out of my money. I looked for any opportunity to plop him on the table and rearrange his body parts. I went to see a lawyer. I've known Dawn since high school. I explained the circumstances. I needed a new will. If anything happened to me, I didn't want anything to go to Judith. Dawn quickly drafted a will detailing the reasons I was changing it so that any time I tried to revoke it in court, they would have a reason in front of them. The house I was going to leave to my nephew and niece, my sister's children. This would really annoy Judith as my sister hates her to the core. They have a small house, so this would allow them to move into it, but the title would remain with the children. I don't like her husband. Judith was legally entitled to a percentage of the cash before the divorce, but Dawn showed me how to reduce the amount classified as cash. When we were done with the details, she had her secretary type it all up. If I came in later in the afternoon, I could sign it, and it would be witnessed and notarized. I did so, and the document was duly signed. Dawn started talking about the divorce. I told her everything I thought, and she said she would help me at friendly rates. She hated Bryant, too. I don't think anyone at school had a kind word to say about him. I admit I would have gone to his funeral, but only to help load him into the crematorium furnace. If he had been buried, I would have danced on his grave and peed on it. I talked about everything that had happened at Bennett's, the holiday, and the hotel. I was hoping to have the videotape this week, and when I did, I was going to kick that whore out. I told her about the contents of Judith's cell phone. The messages between her and Bryant talked about the fun they were planning and how I was a cuckold and a loser. Judith was as bad as he was at humiliating me. The emails revealed that Harvey, Bennett, and Bryant made up the story so Bryant could go on vacation with Judith at my goddamn expense. They all had a damn good laugh about it. Dawn told me to email everything to her. She'll get the divorce papers ready. She'll also prepare the papers to sue Bennett and company for various unlawful employment practices. She'll know who to hand them to Judith, either at our house or at her place of employment. I laughed. Dawn looked at me. If their date on Wednesday is videotaped, can we file it when they leave the room on Thursday? Dawn laughed. I didn't realize you had such a vindictive streak in you. That's great. Danny and Kate set up the camera. It picked them up. Kate downloaded the content for Danny, who emailed it to me. Kate put the camera in place on the second attempt. Dawn filed the papers with the court on Thursday morning and received the court document later that morning. She asked for it as a favor. Bryant didn't seem to be liked anywhere. As they were leaving the hotel room in the afternoon, a sheriff's officer handed Judith the papers. She screamed and cried. Who cares? Not me! At Dawn's direction, he removed the house and car keys from her keychain. I left work early that day. I packed all her clothes in black garbage bags and left them by the front door for her to pick up. I kept her wedding ring, since it was a family heirloom, and the damn expensive diamond earrings, bracelet, and necklace that she just had to take with her on her honeymoon. I included all of her paperwork. My home phone rang and her parents' number popped up on the screen. I answered it. Her father yelled into the phone, "What the hell you got?" As I hung up, he called again and started the same thing. I hung up again. 6 times we did this dance until her sister Janine called. She at least tried to speak. Adam, can you tell us what happened? Judith is confused. We can't understand what she's saying. She said something about a divorce. What happened? I took a slow breath. Janine, Judith has been treating me like crap for at least a year. Nothing I did was right. It turns out that for the last 14 or 15 months, she's been having an affair with Darren Dan Bryant. I just found out about it. There's a lot more, but we're done. You can come and get her things. The door locks have already been changed. I will enforce the prenup your father wanted to put in place to protect his whore. When I said that, you could hear him yelling at me. I hung up the phone. An hour later, Janine arrived on her own. She brought their big car. I helped her put all the stuff in it. She asked questions, and I explained to her. She shook her head. She was always a stupid, selfish cow. She had a great boyfriend, and she left him for a lowlife like Bryant. He's not fit to tie your shoelaces. I feel so sorry for you. After they left the hotel, Danny took the video camera, so we had 2 days of evidence. He gave me the video camera at Dawn's request. I picked up the car from the hotel parking lot and went to bed. Tomorrow at work would be interesting. Before entering the main office, I went to the kitchen and put some chocolates in a box. Lots of pretty chocolates. This office has a lot of sweet tooth. Too bad I changed the contents. They were laxative chocolates, very explosive. I poured a powder containing pepper on the toilet seats. I turned on the toilet paper and paper towel dispensers. I walked into the office and it was obvious that everyone was aware of what had happened the day before. They seemed shocked that I could have done something like that. They talked about it, but not about Bryant entertaining my wife with me. I opened my email and sent emails to my clients, then deleted the entry. I expected today to be my last day. I used a program to clear the computer's free space of anything that could still be recovered. Bennett walked out of his office with Harvey and Bryant. Everyone was furious. Bennett shouted, "Why couldn't you leave it alone, you cuckold? You're a goddamn loser. Why get a divorce? Nobody wants a loser like you." Bryant smirked. "Why did you call your divorce adultery? You're just admitting to the world that you're a cuckold. She needed a real man." I laughed. That pissed him off even more. He continued, "You could have just said irreconcilable differences. It doesn't change anything." I spoke calmly, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "That cunt's name is here for a reason. Every place he works will be watching him. Every woman he looks at will know he will be entertaining them. That means the divorce will be in a few weeks, not a year. I'm not a damn loser. I put my trust in some idiots and got screwed. Rest assured I'll get mine back. There's always tomorrow. You're just bastards." Bennett shouted, "You can get out. Don't expect any references or the money you say you're owed." I held out the letter from Dawn to him. I had a little video camera on me that filmed them, so I had proof that he'd gotten it. I spoke to them slowly, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "This is a complaint of workplace bullying related to Bryant's solicitation of prostitution. I have all of your emails, messages, in which you arranged for him to take my place at that party." I turned to the audience. "Everything you knew, and no one had the decency to tell me about it. Don't you ever bloody try to talk to me again. You are the lowest scum on earth. This place is a cesspool. How many others like you are covered by the wives or husbands of other so-called friends and co-workers?" I could see that some of those words hit the mark. I'd hate to get a reference from here. When this comes up in court, who's going to use Bennett? I looked Bryant in the eye and smiled my best evil grin. "Until we meet again, you little jerk." He crapped his pants. I stepped back. The fury on Bennett's face was absolutely adorable. I almost expected to hear him collapse to the floor with a severe stroke, not fatal, but hopefully enough to ruin the rest of his miserable goddamn life. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. I headed home. There were several calls on the answering machine. Janine was asking if I was okay and if Judith wanted to see me. One from her mom, "Judith is so upset, can we make up?" I called Janine. "I don't want to talk to that slut. We will never be together. She can have fun with Bryant and whoever she wants. I'm free of her." Janine understood. I decided to take a vacation and drove across the country in my car. It was actually not a bad car, comfortable and roomy. After 3 weeks, I returned to my house. A neighbor saw me pulling up and turned to me. "Adam, some people tried to take over your house. I called the police. They took them away. The cops left their details for you to contact them." I thanked him. I called the police and spoke to one of the officers. It was Judith's father and brother. They had come because Judith wanted to take the engagement ring and diamond set that she claimed belonged to her. They did not try to break down the door, so they were advised to contact a real estate attorney. I thanked the officer. I was happy the bitch was off the hook. 6 weeks later, I was in court for a divorce hearing. Sitting in the press box was Dawn's sister Avril, a reporter for the local newspaper. This was going to be fun. Judith's attorney began by stating that his client did not want a divorce, that she had only lost her way a couple of times and was very sorry for the pain she had caused. She would like the court to order counseling so we can forget about her recklessness. If the court feels it cannot do this, her husband will take £105,000 out of their joint account. She was due half that amount. Dawn stood up. Perhaps Mrs. Holliday could appear in court, and we could check her actions. Her lawyer quickly tried to prevent this. The sheriff noted his reluctance to have her as a witness. Dawn continued. "My lord, this marriage is over. Mrs. Holliday had an affair with Darren Bryant, aided and abetted by Mr. Holliday's manager and owner of the firm. Bryant also works there. Mr. Holliday was fired from their job for having the audacity to divorce this adulteress rather than allow them to continue their games with him. This affair went on for about 15 months before her husband found out. It was a deliberate act on her part as she knew Bryant and her husband hated each other. It stretches back to their childhood days when Bryant was the school bully until Mr. Holliday dealt with him. With the connivance of his superiors, Mr. Halliday was forced to cancel a vacation trip intended to try to improve their relationship. Bryant went instead. My client was forced to work to fill in for Bryant, who was on an important course. Completely bogus. That was a year ago. The fact that she took Bryant on leave rather than her husband shows Mrs. Holliday's utter contempt for her husband. Since then, my client has had no intimate relations with his wife, for which he is now very grateful. Her attorney raises the issue of the division of marital property. At her request, both maintained personal accounts, but had a joint account for household expenses. Bank mandates paid so much monthly from each personal account until Mrs. Holliday took the liberty of canceling hers 10 months before their separation. This did not prevent Mrs. Holliday from spending money on her adultery, but she used only the joint account, which by this time held only Mr. Holliday's funds. In total, she spent more than £47,000 on Bryant and herself, funded by Mr. Holliday. Their emails and messages about it say gloatingly, "The invoices for their hotel room and the bill used are contained in documents, which I will shortly provide to the court." This was not once or twice, as she wants us to believe, but over a period of 15 months, meeting at least 6 to 10 times a month, if not more. Mr. Holliday's neighbors claim that a man remarkably similar to Bryant was often at their home when Mr. Holliday was away for a few days because of his work. 1 or 2 occasions may be remedied by labor and goodwill on both sides, but such a perfunctory breach of the sanctity of marriage means there is no hope of reconciliation. The £105,000 bill was for house extensions or moving house. Mrs. Holliday has not contributed a penny to it in the last year, while Mr. Holliday has continued to pay £6,000. Mrs. Holliday did not pay the rental value of the car she drove. She specifically put it in Mr. Holliday's name so that he would pay for it. Her texts and emails show that this is exactly what she did. Any money Mrs. Holliday feels she is entitled to is more than offset by the amount she owes Mr. Holliday for the theft from the joint account. Judith's attorney stood up and stated that it was not theft. Dawn said it was a matter of interpretation. Judith, her father, and the lawyer were not amused. I only smiled complacently. Dawn continued. Prior to the marriage, both parties entered into a prenuptial agreement. Judith's solicitor interrupted her. We challenge the relevance of that document. In our opinion, this document misapplies the law. Dawn continued. It was drafted by a learned friend of mine, looking at Solicitor Judith. It allows for the division of marital property, but does not allow for alimony to be paid to the injured partner. Mr. Holliday owned the house before the marriage. There was no mortgage because it was bequeathed to him after his parents died in a car accident. Mr. Holliday's accounts at the time of the separation are reflected in this document. Excluding the £105,000 already mentioned, his assets amounted to £34,900. Automobiles are excluded from all assets. Our investigation into Mrs. Halliday's financial situation revealed that she was aware of assets worth £53,400 after the marriage. Mr. Halliday was aware of these accounts. We discovered that she had 2 other accounts. Judith's sigh made everyone look at her. She looked at me, but I only held back a complacent smile. She looked really pissed off. Dawn continued. At the time of the separation, Mrs. Holliday had £217,674 in the 2 accounts. I have made a record of this in the documents I will present to the court. I ask that the assets be divided in the normal way. Mr. Holliday, although unfairly dismissed for standing up for himself, is not claiming any alimony. According to the prenuptial agreement, the adulterer pays all expenses, so I will send my account to my learned friend later today for settlement in the usual way within 7 days. Judith's lawyer stood up. My lord, I dispute the amount Mr. Holliday is demanding. The two accounts in question are her pension savings, which had to be withdrawn due to financial changes, so they should be ignored. They should have been reinvested, but due to her emotional state in relation to the divorce, this did not happen. My client disputes Mr. Halliday's claim that she owed him over £47,000 in respect of the household account. As I have asked previously, I am seeking advice. Dawn replied, "The payments on this account match the bonuses she received in her job. Again, the relevant documents refute the claim that these are her retirement savings." The sheriff retired for lunch, but not before asking Judith's attorney to speak with his client to confirm the truth or untruthfulness of the statements made in court this morning. He didn't like being lied to, so he hoped for the truth. After lunch, Judith's attorney stated that the facts reported by Dawn were true. The sheriff granted the divorce and ordered her to pay me £118,000. He disregarded £105,000, as these sums amounted to what she had spent specifically to humiliate her husband. In summing up, he expressed his displeasure at her behavior in relation to adultery and the fact that she had concealed her assets. Avril's article in the newspaper was excellent. It covered all the salient points except for the amount awarded. Judith, Bryant, Harvey, and Bennett were named and shamed. I was happy to be rid of this whore, but I wanted more, much more. Judith and her family had always been staunch churchgoers. My non-attendance didn't suit them. 2 weeks later was Mothering Sunday. I can only imagine their shock when they came out and saw numerous, at least 60 pictures of their daughter with Bryant and another 20 pictures of the minister with the wife of a local politician. Danny had set up the camera a day early, as the room was not booked that day. It wasn't until we were reviewing the footage that we noticed the priest. From the looks of it, all the parishioners were on edge. The priest had to run away from his wife's brothers. Judith's father almost had a stroke. What's in the 10 Commandments? Thou shalt not commit adultery. Maybe that's the one they should have paid attention to. 5 weeks after that, I was back in court against Bennett, Harvey, and Bryant. Avril was in the reporter's box again. Bennett's lawyer tried to get her removed, but the sheriff decided the case was in the public interest. Dawn called me to testify. I sat in the box for over an hour before she finished talking to me. I detailed the instances when Harvey had ordered me to fill in for Bryant at work, about the canceled vacation and the lack of payouts. When I checked the dates of withdrawals from our joint account, they matched. When I told Bennett about it, he only laughed. He knew about the affair since Bryant had openly bragged about it. I detailed how I had discovered texts, emails between the four of them, revealing their collusion. At the end, I reported that I was not paid for the period of my termination, as well as the amount paid to Bryant in my stead. Dawn's last 2 questions were, how would you describe the relationship between Bennett, Harvey, Bryant, and the other employees, especially over the last 15 months? I answered, I was treated with disdain. Harvey threatened me if I complained about covering for Bryant or having to fix his shoddy repairs. Bennett would just look at me and smirk. My so-called co-workers seemed to know jokes I didn't. They used my integrity to play tricks on me, as I did my best for the company. Harvey even made me use my own cell phone to save the company money. He put a tracker on the company's SIM card so Bryant would know if I was coming. She asked, if you had known before, would you have worked as hard for them? I replied, no, I would have quit. I had offers, but I decided loyalty was a good trait to have. Dawn filed all the paperwork with the court. Copies of emails, texts, my business records and statements, payments made and due. Bennett's attorney tried to argue that I made up all the facts about non-payments, bullying, and more. I keep exemplary records, and he was unsuccessful. His attorney began his defense by stating that his client was not served with the documents that Friday, which the court had already heard. They weren't served on him until much later, so he didn't have time to study all the charges against him. I figured he was trying to make up for the fact that he hadn't been able to get anything from me. Dawn stood up and turned on the tape of me handing Bennett the papers, complete with time and date. The lawyer was angry at Bennett for misleading him. He asked for a continuance so he could talk to him. The sheriff gave him 20 minutes. Upon his return, the attorney called Bennett to testify. He accused me of not being paid due to an oversight because of customer termination problems. He notified the finance department to get me paid immediately. His attorney did not inquire about his knowledge of the affair or his involvement in it. Bennett was about to leave the witness stand when Dawn stood up. "One moment, Mr. Bennett," she smiled. Beware of her smile. I'm about to fry you. "Mr. Bennett, do you actively recruit people for extramarital affairs during your working hours?" Both Bennett and his lawyer looked at her. Bennett stammered, "No. Occasionally these things happen, but I don't hire people based on that." Dawn lowered her gaze to the paper in front of her. "Mr. Harvey, fired from previous employment for false reporting and adultery with secretary. Mr. Bryant, fired from his previous position. Mr. Carter, previously fired due to adultery with 3 women at his workplace. Mrs. Simmons, fired due to adultery at her previous place of employment with the husband of the owner's daughter. She spends 2 days a week in your office, doesn't she? Harvey, Bryant, Carter, and you share her sometimes. You talk about the wives of other employees you've entertained. You share your sexist jokes about horny husbands like Mr. Holliday who were decent men and foolishly confided in you." Bennett's supportive wife came out. "Tell me why you think hiring people is not pimping, not soliciting prostitution. After all, that's exactly what you're doing." Bennett blushed and couldn't answer. Bennett's attorney tried to prevent him from answering, but the sheriff decided that the question was legitimate because there was a complaint against him. Bennett was unable to answer. "The emails you sent to Mrs. Holliday about how to supervise her husband, were they the actions of a caring employer? Did they comply with health and safety regulations relating to the care of the physical and mental health of your employees? When you found out about his wife's affair with your work partner, you did nothing to inform him. Is this the act of a caring employer or a predator who is so keen to hurt someone because they are so much better than you? The only thing that made sense was not wanting him to leave because you needed his skills, but even then, you bullied him with Harvey's help. Sent him away so Bryant could entertain his wife. A caring employer. When he found out about it, instead of helping him, you ridiculed him and then unfairly fired him. Without him, we see what your company has become. All of these actions constitute bullying and harassment in the workplace. That's what you are, a bully and a predator." Dawn continued. "Who came up with the idea that Bryant should entertain Mrs. Holliday in order to screw Mr. Holliday?" Bennett lowered his eyes. The sheriff told him to answer. "Bryant. He hated Holliday. He knew the man was a better engineer, but that wasn't all." "Why did you agree to this?" "I thought Holliday was a loser. He could be lost in a crowd. It was fun to watch that deluded bastard know nothing. It was no longer interesting to listen to Bryant talk about Judith and what bad she was. We planned for him to find out. We thought he'd capitulate. We could have wiped his nose for months, cuckold. But he fought back. He cheated us out of everything we had. All the clients who used him left us. Bryant is so afraid to go outside. Harvey shits himself if his name is mentioned. I looked up when he said they developed it. No wonder Bill kept quiet. He was in on it. They saw me and laughed at me after all. Screw them." Dawn continued. "Whose idea was it to ask Mr. Holliday to pay for all the room orders?" "Harvey. He disliked Mr. Holliday as he always showed him up as a bad manager." "A Holliday?" "Bryant and Harvey. I laughed so hard I agreed." Dawn said quietly, "Stealing Mr. Halliday's salary?" Bennett hissed. His lawyer stood up, disputing the phrase. The sheriff allowed it, since that was what they were doing in this context. Bennett said, "Harvey and Bryant, I went for it. We knew from Judith that he never checked the accounts, so he'll never know." "Why did you fire him for no reason?" Bennett was furious. "No reason. That bastard let everyone know what we did. He made fools of us." He stood there with an evil smirk on his face and watched Bryant almost throw up. He crapped his pants. The look in his eyes said he hated us. I didn't realize he was so angry. If I had known, I never would have gotten involved. If I had left him there, one of us, or perhaps all of us, would have been looking over his shoulder, waiting to see what he would do. He put laxative chocolates in the kitchen. People had to stand in line to use the restroom. A lot of people had accidents. No one saw him, but we know it was him. Dawn said quietly, "As with everything, you accuse Mr. Holliday with absolutely no evidence. You bullied him, stole from him, because you're jealous of the kind of man he is. You're pathetic." Dawn sat up. The sheriff tried not to laugh as Bennett explained the predicament the officers were in. He would talk to Dawn about it later. In his opinion, it was completely justified, and if I had been brought to trial and found guilty, he would have admonished me. Bryant spoke next. He told his lawyer that it was just a little fun to get back at me. Judith and he got close, thinking up ways to humiliate me. This went on much longer than expected. Over the vacations, I was just floored. Dawn asked just one question. "Did you ever pay for the room you used or the beer you drank at his house?" Bryant lowered his eyes. "No." Things got even worse for Harvey. Dawn accused him of falsifying pay and annual leave records. She made sure his deception was on the court record. If the Bennetts went bust, which seemed likely, no employer would look favorably on him. The sheriff postponed sentencing for 2 weeks. Before the deadline came, he asked Dawn if I had been paid as Bennett had suggested. It was a negative answer. In summarizing his findings, he left them all unsupported. He admitted all the complaints in our favor. He awarded me £200,000 for their actions, £33,000 for non-payment of wages. He made a further order that none of them were to receive a penny of wages until all payments to me had been made. If an attempt is made to go bankrupt to avoid this, he has records showing that the firm's bank balance was in excess of £2 million. He will put them in prison for a long time. He made Bennett responsible for my legal fees. I was paid in full the next day. Bennett paid Dawn's legal fees, the full amount, nobody rates. I enjoyed the freedom. I felt better than I had in the last few years. I did some counseling and repair work that convinced me that instead of working for someone else who was screwing me over, I should work for myself. The biggest expense was specialized diagnostic equipment, costing upwards of £20,000 to £30,000. Bennett decided to liquidate the company before he lost everything as he had few customers left. On the day of the sale, Danny went there to try and buy the equipment on my behalf. I knew they wouldn't let me in. I set a budget of $30,000. The catalog had the first 4 items I really wanted, but I expected each of them to cost $10,000 and up. I was very surprised when Danny called and said I had all 4 for $17,000. I told him to try to get as many of the items I had marked down as possible. Later, he called back. He had spent $30,000, but there were 2 items left on my list that I had put a limit of $3,000 on. If I wanted them, he would loan me the money for them. I told him I didn't need the loan, but I wanted to get them if possible. With them, I started a company called Halliday Mechanical Services. I leased the van because the cost was about the same as when I bought it, but I didn't expect to get a good price in the future. I contacted my previous customers and was soon very busy. I received calls from several of Bennett's former co-workers who were hoping I would hire them. Not a chance in hell. One afternoon, I found myself driving home not far from the hotel Judith and Bryant were using. I bought Danny a few beers, but did nothing for Kate. I called and was delighted to find her working at reception. She smiled at me. "What can I do for you, sir?" She was great. She was a beautiful girl, but now she was fully a woman. Danny wasn't lying when he said she had the kind of body one could only dream of. I liked her smile right away. "Kate, I'd like to take you out to dinner to thank you for what you've done for me with Danny. If there's anything else you'd like to do, I'd be happy to do it. I owe you a lot." She smiled again. "You can take me to dinner tomorrow at 7. I finish at 6, but I'll shower here and try to look presentable for you." It was my turn to smile. "You are much more than presentable. You are beautiful even in your corporate clothes. I'll be here on time. Thank you for not brushing me off. We exchanged smiles and I left feeling like I had won the lottery. I was glad my job the next day was close to home and went smoothly. I finished early and came home. Showered and shaved, then started thinking about what to wear. I wanted to make an impression, but I wasn't sure what exactly. I felt worse than a 15-year-old on a first date. I realized that my closet needed an update. I was in place at 6:45. I was very nervous. She showed up a few minutes later. She was stunning. She was laughing at me. I realized my jaw had dropped. I'm sorry, but you look absolutely gorgeous. I admitted, I haven't had my tongue slurred like that since I was 15. She laughed and held out her hand to me. She took me to a restaurant. I don't remember what I ate, but I can tell you it was the best night of my life. After eating, we went to the lounge for a drink. I was glad I took a cab. Even if I hadn't been drinking, I don't think I would have been able to drive. She is very intelligent, and we talked about many topics. She never criticized my views, but made me explain when they differed from hers. We gently discussed our differences and learned so much more because of it. Her laughter lit up the room. It was after 10 o'clock when she said she had to go, as she had duty at 7 in the morning. I told her I would take a cab, but would take her home before I dropped her off if she wished. We did just that. She stopped about a half-mile from my house. Before we left the hotel, I said, Kate, I came tonight because I am indebted to you for what you have done. I have never enjoyed an evening like this before. I'd like to ask you to meet me again if you don't think I'm too frank. She kissed me in response. She pulled out my cell phone and asked me to open it. She entered her number in there. I gave her mine and my email since she said she would send me her lists so I would know when she was available. We dated for 3 months. She's so sweet. I'm just trying to convince myself that she's another Judith. I know she isn't, but when she's working, I have another life. I've been spying on Bryant. Gradually, it's getting easier for him to go outside. He stopped when Harvey got a good beating. I was suspected, but I had an alibi since I worked at a factory 100 miles away and had a few other people with me. Bennett was a lot easier. He likes to have a good drink at the golf club, so he was caught 3 Fridays in a row over the legal limit. He was banned from driving for 10 years, must pass a sobriety test, and retake his driving test before he can be issued a license again. In total, he was fined £5,000. His wife is said to have kicked him out of the house and is divorcing him over adultery, demanding every penny she can get. But Bryant is personal. Eventually, I caught him walking through the park towards the pub. I beat the shit out of him again. The next afternoon, I was at home with Kate when the police called about the attack on Bryant. I had to tell them I didn't have an alibi. I didn't want to drag a friend into something that could lead to jail time. Everything I was wearing, clothes, mask, underwear, gloves, etc., was burned and completely destroyed before I got home. I didn't say a word to him. Kate laughed as she told the officers. I wouldn't have had the strength since we'd spent all day in bed. The policeman drove off. I looked at Kate. She was smiling. I took her hand and pulled her to me. And so we got down to it. Next chapter. At work, everything that could go wrong went wrong. Every time I fixed one part, another part failed. It was an older model, and I had already told them it needed to be replaced about 2 years ago. A new machine had been ordered, but it was due in 6 months, so I had to repair it. 2 days turned into 4. Kate and I talked on the phone. I loved hearing her voice and listening to her talk about her day. She laughed when I told her about things that were going wrong. The time alone made me look forward to the future. After Judith, I never looked for another partner, as I didn't feel I could trust again. Kate said she waited until I was ready. I thought about my life without her, and it would be disgusting. If anything, it would be worse than what I had with Judith. If anyone existed for me, it would be Kate. I knew I loved her more than I'd ever loved anyone before. I needed to talk to her about it and what I needed. That day when I got home, she worked until 11 p.m., so I didn't see her. I was busy putting together an invoice for the job when the doorbell rang. I was surprised to see her there. She looked worried. I invited her to come in. I wanted to kiss her, but she pulled me away. Now I was concerned. She spoke softly, almost sadly. Adam, while you were away, Judith was at the hotel with her firm making a presentation. Afterward, she spoke to me. She knows we've been seeing each other. She asked me to ask you to talk to her. You have not spoken once since the documents were served. She will meet you wherever you wish. She said she has no intention of hurting us. She wants to explain everything to your face. I'm worried that you still have feelings for her. You never mention her. She's more experienced than me, so your life would be better than what we did. I don't want to lose you, but it's better to lose you now than later. She was almost sobbing when she finished. Kate, while I was gone, I thought about you a lot. I love you in ways I never thought possible. I've never loved anyone the way I love you. I kept you at a distance because I was very much afraid of being betrayed again, though every conscious thought in my brain said it would never do so. I never mentioned Judith because I feel nothing but contempt for her and for myself for letting her treat me the way she did. Judith is right. It's probably time to talk. She knows I will never forgive or forget what she did. She doesn't have any feelings for me, and I don't have any for her. You said you waited until I was ready. You were willing to wait because to you I was worth it, especially if I was with you at the end. I kept telling myself over and over to let love in, but I was so scared. You took that away. I want you in my life. Kate threw herself into my arms and kissed me. She said, I have a check in case it rains. Don't forget. A week later, I was talking to Judith at the small bar that nestled between us. She looked like she had lost a little weight and confidence. We ordered coffee. She started, Adam, thank you for agreeing to meet me. I can see that Kate is going good for you. You've never looked so happy in the last few years, if not your whole life. She's not like me, so take a chance. She's a beautiful woman. I want to apologize, even though I know that word sounds ridiculous coming from me, the nasty bitch. I've been thinking for a long time about why I ruined our marriage. At first I wanted to blame you, but Janine wouldn't let me. She made me realize how much I hurt you. I found a counselor who helped me learn the truth about myself and why I did it. I still have a lot of work to do. I could go on for weeks telling you about this, but I'll be brief. I've always been an egotist, a narcissist. I like to think I was better than others. When I met you, I saw a caring, loving man who was completely unaware of the impact he had on others. Because of your character, you could get any woman you wanted. You are so conscientious about everything you do. I loved this man, a feeling I had never felt before. You loved me, and because of that love, you would give me anything I wanted if you could. A diamond on our honeymoon, even if it meant we couldn't afford the tour you really wanted. Over time, I began to see your efforts to please me not as love, but as a sign of weakness. When we talked about children, I wanted one at first, but having lost track of who you were and, as a result, my respect for you, I decided against it. Once again, you didn't fight back. You always put me first, and I never realized what that really meant until it was too late. When Bryant and I met at an event, it was a fascinating conversation with your mortal enemy. I told him too much, and we met several times, talking mostly about you. He latched onto my disrespect for you. A few weeks later, he seduced me, even though I didn't resist. But you would have been a 100 point, and he would have been a 1. I kept coming back just for the thrill of doing it behind your back. My conscience was disgusting, but I took my self-loathing out on you. I made your life a living hell. In fact, hell would have been a better option. The need to humiliate you only grew. I still can't understand why it occurred to me. How could you humiliate yourself if you didn't know? Why did I treat you that way? I was just shocked when Bryant talked about coming to that holiday in your place. I knew that holiday was supposed to try to fix us, but once again, excitement and stupidity took over. Harvey and Bennett were in on it. I hadn't realized until that moment that Bryant was telling them everything. I was tormented by my conscience and became an ice maiden, rejecting your attempts at lovemaking because I didn't want to experience love. I was so disgusted with myself. I knew you didn't deserve the way I treated you. I didn't know until the trial that they orchestrated this, put up the pictures to publicly humiliate you. I'm very sorry. Those 2 days with Bryant should have been the last of my life. If I had known what you already knew, I never would have gone through with it. Listening to Dawn about the divorce and the case against Bennett made me feel so guilty. Because of my stupidity, a lot of shit came down on you and you didn't deserve any of it. I was so ashamed of the way I acted. I realized that the only person who was truly humiliated was me, and I deserved it. I couldn't believe I'd wasted my money on that bastard. When we came out of the church and saw our pictures and the priest's pictures, I realized you were behind it. I was mad as hell, but my conscience kept me going. You deserved it. That's when I sought counseling. After that incident, I caught Bryant and got my own revenge on him. It was at the club. She smiled, adding, I heard he wasn't working anymore, but he never got caught. Dad and my brother caught him and made him give me all the money back. I noticed it, but I didn't know the reason why. I'm sorry I was such a self-centered bitch who mistook love for submission, caring for weakness. I'm moving to another branch to get out of this town. All I get here if I go outside is a room. I need a fresh start, a chance to be a good person again. I may never find someone as good as you, but I have only myself to blame for losing you. I misinterpreted everything you did because of love as weakness, whereas it's strength. You didn't do anything wrong. If I can give you some advice, some of it I learned in therapy. It's okay to disagree, to want different things, but to discuss them. Don't just back down because it will make the other person happy. Say what's on your mind. Bennett was only right about one thing. You're a hell of a great engineer. I'm not surprised you're doing well. You're a damn good person, just don't believe in yourself enough. Tell Kate about the feelings you're holding in because of me. Be a team player. She'll be good for you. With great sadness, she finished, I'm a damn fool. She stood up and said goodbye to me. I returned home where a worried Kate was waiting for me. I said those 5 little words. Kate, we need to talk. I smiled as she raised her eyebrows. I kissed her gently. I told her everything that had happened, about how Judith had mistreated me, and also about Bryant. I told her how I felt inferior, how I couldn't believe I deserved to live with her. When I was done, she was crying. I cried too. I unloaded on myself for the first time in my life. We finished crying, snuggled up against each other. When we finished crying, she wiped my face. Adam, Judith was right about 2 things. What a wonderful person you are and how little you realize it. Maybe if counseling helped her, it will help you too. When you mentioned the kids, I could tell from your voice how deeply it affected you. It's a lovely house, a large lot, and it could be expanded so you could have a lovely family home. All I can say is that if we were to live together, I would love to have children with you. I'm not Judith. I don't see you as a calm, thinking, weak person. I see a strong person who is always striving to be a better person, to help others. We'll disagree, we'll fight sometimes, but you'll always have my love and respect. Think back to our first night. Throughout dinner we talked, we had disagreements, but we discussed them and learned how different perspectives add to our experiences. We both need to talk, to discuss any problems that may arise. Later, she moved in with us, and we talked about renting her apartment. She wanted to wait a few months to make sure I was happy. A few weeks after she moved in, I was at the safe when she noticed the jewelry boxes. She insisted I get them. I opened the big one with diamonds and told her the story, including the fact that I didn't get to go on a tour I really wanted to go on. I'd purposely kept it from Judith because she'd betrayed me with Bryant. I blushed, taking the small box in my hands. Kate, this is a family heirloom. I gave it to Judith as a gift, but I kept it for myself. It's an engagement ring. I've been thinking about proposing to you for weeks now. I asked your father's permission, And he's thrilled, and so is your mom. Kate, will you marry me? We'll find you a new ring if you say yes. She looked into my eyes, smiling, her tears flowing. She said quietly, yes. She then opened a small box. This ring is beautiful. I will wear it proudly. It will need to be resized. I won't wear the diamond set because of its history. You wouldn't want me to wear it the same way, so I think you should give it to Judith as a parting gift. I contacted Judith and arranged to give her the diamond set. She was very grateful. She said that if she was ever tempted to do something bad, it would remind her of selfless love. I went to several counseling sessions and Kate went with me. They helped me a lot, although not as much as her love. It turned out that Kate really was my kind of love. I was so happy that a lot of people remarked on it. My business was growing by the day. I took on 3 more engineers whom I vetted thoroughly. They were not only excellent engineers, but also reliable, faithful, and in a strong marriage. They wouldn't mess around or put up with a coworker who had cheated on another. So that Kate did most of the office work for me when her shifts allowed, but as my business grew, it became more and more. We discussed options. She worked for me full-time, hired office staff. She loved her job at the hotel. It was multidisciplinary. She was often out in front, but she also worked behind the scenes a lot. She had the skills for my office, but if we had kids, we would be looking for someone else. So I took over the office, hiring an assistant who could do most of the administrative work. Kate handled a lot of the accounts, which she said didn't take much time because I was so organized. Kate and I got married in a small wedding. Danny was my best man. Her sister Jacqueline was my maid of honor. Her parents were very happy to see us both so happy. They always treated me like the son they never had. I couldn't have wished for better relatives. Kate made me go on my honeymoon. She organized it especially for me. It included an excursion that I wanted to visit on my first honeymoon. We both enjoyed the tour of ancient sites, although I was more into history than she was. I had to suffer for it as she loves roller coasters, so I got to ride with her many times the next week as we visited several theme parks. As I was driving back to the hotel, she casually revealed that she was a commando. At least I think it was accidental. We had to hurriedly get ready for most meals as we explored each other as soon as we entered the hotel room. A couple months later, her parents were even happier as their first grandchild was born. Kate and I moved into her apartment while the builders renovated and expanded our home. The work was finished a month before our first child, Gordon, was born. He was followed by a sister, Jennifer, and then another boy, John. 11 years later, I have 12 engineers and half a dozen office staff. Cheryl still watches out for the day of the bad secretary. If we're overworked, she leaves my office. Since the firm is small, I know her husband and I won't do anything that could damage their relationship with the employees. I still vet new employees thoroughly. I will not hire anyone who plays games with me. As for Judith, I have seen her a couple times when she came to visit her parents. She's doing well professionally, but she's still single. One day, Kate spotted her at a local restaurant with Janine. She had a very sad and envious look on her face. Kate, our kids, and I were there to eat, and the kids were having fun in the little play park. I pushed their swings and caught Jennifer on the parachute. As we left, we said hello. Judith's adultery turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me as it led me to Kate. Her love and support means everything to me. I've never been happier. The end. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. So subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.